Plug in, log on, let's break it down. Truth ain't scared to be found. Dogma shakes when questions rise. No more fear, no more lies. Cyber deconstruction, let's get real. Faith when challenge starts to peel. If it's built on solid ground, why is it scared to stick around? Sacred text, twisted views. Time to separate lies from truth. Not here to burn, but here to see what survives when the mind breaks free. Deconstruct, analyze, open hearts, open eyes. If it falls, let it be. What remains is meant to be. Cyber deconstruction, let's get real. Faith when challenge starts to peel. If it's built on solid ground, why is it scared to stick around? Not for hate, but for the wise. Truth won't shatter, only lies. Time to start the conversation. Now ain't the time to pretend nothing happened.
Hello, everybody. Let's get my camera turned on. And we'll also bring up my guest host for today, which is my good friend Emily from Emily Talks. How you doing, Emily?
Hello, how's it going?
It's going good. I can't complain. So just so you're aware, I do also dual stream onto YouTube. So we are streaming on YouTube right now as well. And this link up here, Emily, is because YouTube doesn't interact with TikTok. I have this link up here. I'm able to port guests over to Video Ninja, and I can talk to them there. So when I port them over, you won't be able to. Sometimes it lets you hear them, sometimes it doesn't. But what you can do is when I do bring somebody from Video Ninja, you can also type that link in and I'll pop you over there as well. And you'll be able to engage in the conversation that way.
Yeah, that might be... Hold on, let me see if I can work it from here. Because I'm on like an Xbox thing, so I don't know if it works via that. Let me see.
That's fair, that's fair. And how you doing, Life Beyond Belief? How you doing, Dugald? And real quick, everybody that's coming in, if I could get Dugald, Z, and Life Beyond Belief, if all three of you could leave comments in the chat, make sure you follow them. They host amazing deconstruction lives as well. So make sure you give them a follow as well. Make sure we're helping out the other deconstruction members in the community. And welcome in chat over on YouTube. And then later on tonight will be as a matter of fact, I won't worry about bringing it up. Later on tonight is going to be another podcast that I do with Jaron from Christ Before Jesus. He and I do a podcast every Thursday. The channel for that is Reason and Rebellion. Go into there. I think tonight, our topic tonight is going to be your God is imaginary. That's when your God is imaginary. How you doing, Mormon LARPer? Darth Dawkins is trashing Deconstruction. Darth Dawkins, listen. Darth Dawkins doesn't know the scripture. Every time he goes into lives, comes into our lives, he gets... it's not on Spotify right now. We need to get it on Spotify. But Darth Dawkins is ridiculous. All he tries to do is burden shift. So Emily, I don't know if you're familiar with Darth Dawkins.
I've heard of him a little bit. I think I saw a clip of him about 2 minutes debating Danny, and it was insane.
Yeah, do you remember Nate, right? Like, I think it's British Nate. He hasn't been on for a minute, but he's the person who Avatar Isaac used to debate him quite a bit. That's Darth Dawkins.
You mean
That's
his name used to be like Edna Mod or something?
Huh?
You mean the guy
Yes.
with the username of that? Yeah, I think he's Jamaican. But yeah, no
yeah,
one's familiar.
Oh yeah, he might be. But Darth Dawkins is him for the deconstruction community, but Darth Dawkins is so much like even less of a good debater. His whole argument is you can't have knowledge. So it's what's called the transcendental argument for God. The conclusion is without God you can't have knowledge. And then when you try to debate him on it, he's like, no, you don't believe in God. So because you don't believe in God, I don't have to listen to you because you have no knowledge. You can't even reason because you don't have God. Like that's his argument.
That like means nothing. I swear that's like circular a little bit.
It is. And yeah, I actually have a video of him on my profile where he came in my live, and that's exactly what he tried to do. Came on, tried to debate me, and he immediately tries the burden shift, right? And by trying to burden shift, I wouldn't let him, and he's like, and then he started crying. Exactly, Preston. Oh, go ahead.
I did get to your ninja thing, but I think I can only join with like a camera. So.
Let me go take a look.
I don't think I'll be able to do it on my Xbox thing. Well, maybe if that's the case, I'll drop off as a guest and then try to join on my phone and see if it works that way. If you get a guest that does it, do that.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, just drop here and bring you up over there. But make sure you're following Emily as well. Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about your platform?
Yeah. So I hold debates for a variety of different topics. Lately, it's been a bit difficult because I've been having some internet issues, but I'm hopefully trying to resolve them soon because I do normally have a setup and everything. But typically, I do lives on a variety of different topics, such as mostly it's been like feminism and then like some politics, and then I would do some AV debates as well. But like recently, I've been getting into more sort of philosophical debates, such as like God debates, which is hence why I am here in lovely Cyber's Live to get me more acquainted with those types of debates.
Yep, and so today's topic is, I run different topics, so I figure, is Christianity is false? Can you prove us wrong? I want to know I want to know your strongest arguments, evidence, logical reasons for why you believe Christianity is true. We can go everything from the messianic prophecies. We could talk about the historicity of Jesus. For those who are on my live regularly, you know that I'm a mythicist. I don't even believe that the natural Jesus existed. I don't believe Paul existed. I don't believe the disciples existed. I believe that out of the disciples, we might have some people in the 2nd century named Peter, James, and John. I believe these people were probably some people that were extremely instrumental in the early church, which is why in the New Testament, they're kind of part of Jesus's inner circle. But I believe that these are just paying homage to them. Again, I don't believe any of this actually happened before in the first century. I think that's absolutely false. Silly human, do I know Christ before Jesus? Yes, Christ before Jesus and I are good friends, and in fact, we actually host a podcast together that we will be hosting later on tonight, once a week, every Thursday.
I have a feeling this is going to be very theological, like a lot of scripture
Uh,
analysis.
yes, yeah. So we'll go in there. You'll get some philosophy that comes in here. Um, so it all depends on the route they want to go. If they're coming in it from like a philosophical side, they'll turn to a philosophical debate. If they're trying to come into it like you'll get the whole look at the trees, and then they'll try to jump into scripture. If they're trying to look at scripture, I'll just slap them with the Old Testament. I'll slap them with the messianic prophecies, and then I'll come back with the backhand with how Jesus didn't fulfill them.
Well, I think this will be really good because I think I need to build up on my theological type arguments because I know a lot of people will come with that, like within the Bible. So it's always useful to have like those handy verses where you're just like, "What? Contradiction," or "That's not quite accurate." So I'll be interested to see what people actually address within like the Bible in terms of supporting their arguments.
Yep.
That'll
So
be
yeah, so
interesting.
if you disagree, hop on up. I would love, yeah, and you can also go follow the Deconstruction Zone. That is Justin. If you give him a subscription, he does have a cheat sheet. Has a lot of like it's broken down into. He has the worst bits. He has some logical syllogisms in there. Justin also works with Ian. He's good friends with Ian, so I think Ian's done a bit of work with the syllogisms. There's contradictions in there. There's scientific errors in there. But let's see. We've got Sweet Candy. Sweet Candy. I don't know if you're a Christian or not, but if you are, 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 15 states that if your faith is being challenged, you must give a defense to your argument. So come on up, give an argument. I'd love to hear your arguments.
This one's a good version. Is it the new revised standard
Yeah,
version?
yep, yeah, use the NRSVUE. If you ever go like to Bible school or seminary, that's the version that they give you. There's some other good ones, but those are the best ones. The issues with the KJV, the big issues with the KJV is the KJV is not like a translation at all. Like they had some Hebrew text, but they were mainly using the Bishop's Bible, and they were just trying to essentially confirm that the Bishop's Bible was true. But for political reasons, King James also put in 15 rules for its translation. So one of those 15 rules, for example, was anytime slavery is being presented like a we ought to do this or it's okay, he said, I don't want the word slave used in that case. I want you to use the word servant. Change it to servant. Now, whenever we're trying to make it look like it's bad and we're saying don't do this or we ought not do this, then use the word slave. So he used some like vocabulary manipulation tactics in it, which is reasons why the KJV is just bad. It's horrible apologetics.
What about the NIV, the New International Version?
The NIV is just an apologetic, and it's not even a translation. It's a what's called a thought for thought. So the NIV was made for easy memorization. A lot of churches that use the NIV, they use it because it's extremely easy to read and it's easy to memorize. But it is only a thought for thought. It's not a word for word. So the NIV is a horrible translation. Hello, Pax. How you doing?
Have you seen how do you use the Bible Gateway sometimes to get your verses?
Yeah, so I use Bible as a matter of fact. I've got just from last night. I still have let me get this brought up. I still have Chronicles brought up from last night on Bible Gateway. But as you can see up in the corner there, I use the NRSV.
Yeah. Well, because this one's from the NIV, And do you want to know what the verse is of
Yeah,
the
let's go
So
read the verse.
it says, as you do not know the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. I don't know what that means, but
Yeesh. So here's an argument that you give. One argument that I love is whenever people, because you'll present them with something they can answer, that they absolutely can't answer. How you doing, Arizona Mike? You'll ask them a question they can't answer, and they're going to give you something like, well, God works in mysterious ways. And his understanding and his reasoning is not our reasoning. And there's scripture they might quote for that. The issue with that is, well, if God's ways are higher, how do you know that God's not just literally lying to you about everything, that the whole Bible is a lie because his ways are higher than your ways, and he could literally be intentionally trying to send you to hell? Because the God of the Old Testament is actually, or the God of the Bible is actually Lucifer, and Lucifer is actually God, and he's just trying to lead you away because his ways are higher. Yeah, Preston, you're absolutely right. That forces them to collapse into global skepticism.
there's so
But
many
if you
versions. It's crazy.
right, well, the reasoning being so there's a couple reasons why there's different versions. So if you ever look at like any foreign languages, there's words that we have in the English language that just don't exist, and these would be like the to, and, the, buts, stuff like this, are words that just aren't found in other languages. And so when they're translating it, if you were to read it like in the actual Hebrew, it would be like cud, rabbit, chew, not, and it just have like it just reads weird. If you do like a literal one for one translation, it just translates weird. So there's so many different translations because they're trying to put in like their own ways to make it flow smoothly. And some of them are also theological edits. So they will look at things and try to edit it more favorably to their specific denomination.
Do you know what the original language was that it was written in?
So the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and Aramaic. Parts of it were in Hebrew, parts of it were in Aramaic. Um, the New Testament was written in Greek.
Greek. Okay. Oh yeah, where's that? Because I think this will be really handy. So, because I know you brought this up before, which verse that you pointed to states that the law that was prescribed in the Old Testament still continues in the New Testament?
Oh yeah, there's a few different ones. So we'll get these brought up. The first one we'll go to, and this is one that Christians will like to use. So let me get this brought up on screen real quick. So one is Matthew chapter 5, which is the Sermon on the Mount. So when we go to Matthew
This
chapter
one then,
5,
is this from the New Testament? Matthew. Where's Matthew? You saw the law of the what was that? Law of the prophets. Okay.
yep,
I'm trying to find where Matthew is. Oh,
it's the first book in the New Testament.
first book in the New Testament. Okay. They don't split it into old and new, so I have to find the name.
Should Arab Christians be allowed into the old city? I don't care who's in the old city as long as their goal is to try to work in peace, and that goes for both Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and secular. As long as they are actively trying to work to have peace, and they can all recognize that Jerusalem is considered a holy city to a few different religions, I have no problem with people staying there.
So, which chapter is it in Matthew?
Chapter 5.
5. Okay. Okay, pretty beautiful. Okay. So
And then you
it
go to
is
verse
the law,
17.
the law of the prophets. Got it. Okay.
Yep. So right here, the part that they're going to get hung up on is it'll say, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law." Now, the word abolish means to get rid of. We're going to get away from it. It's done. It doesn't exist anymore. Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, so he's not here to get away, but to fulfill. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to get Christians caught up on this fulfill. They're going to be like, well, see, he fulfilled the law. Well, the issue that you run into there in verse 18, "For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away," right? This is important because Genesis 1:1 starts with, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth." So this would mean that Jesus is talking about until creation ends, which is essentially when he comes back in the second coming. "Until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven." And so what I like to do is when I have Christians coming up here to talk about this, I will say, well, fulfill. Let's say the speed limit, because the Old Testament, it has the laws and in the Torah. If the speed limit says go 50 miles per hour, to abolish the law means we get rid of the speed limit altogether. But if I fulfill the law, that means I drive 50 miles per hour. So Jesus is just here to follow the law. So all this is saying, Jesus is here to follow the law. And then Jesus kind of further confirms this when we go to Mark 7. In Mark 7, we have, so the Pharisees had started to notice that some of the old laws were problematic. We probably shouldn't be stoning women because they didn't bleed the first time they had sex. It's probably barbaric. It's not a good way to test virginity. And so we started building what is now known as like the Talmud. They started doing some edits in the thing that they will refer to as the Mishnah and some other things. So in this passage, the Pharisees had instituted washing hands. But washing hands is not found in Torah. And they notice that Jesus and his disciples are not washing their hands. And so they go to chastise Jesus. And Jesus essentially tells them, you abandon the commandments of God and hold the human tradition. You have a fine way of rejecting the commandments of God in order to keep your tradition. For Moses said, honor your father and mother, and whoever speaks evil of father or mother must surely die. And then he essentially says, this Korban is a human tradition. And if you follow human tradition, you're nullifying the word of God through that tradition. So these are two verses where God is very clearly telling them, follow the old law. The old law is there for a reason.
Is this in chapter 7? Mark 7? Or?
Yep, Mark 7. And will, yes, Israel absolutely has a right to defend itself.
7.
What Israel does not have a right to do is commit a G-side. Go ahead.
Sorry, you said Mark. I was still in Matthew, my bad.
Oh, yep.
I was like, why does this not look the same? Okay, so you were down a bit. Okay. That makes sense now.
And exactly, Legend. The law does not go away just because you follow it.
Yeah, because I've heard that as a frequent argument that people want to try to say, oh, but it's the New Testament, it's different from the Old Testament. So it's like, that's a really good one by highlighting that actually, the law remains the same.
Yeah. Yeah, so a G-side is, so what I say is when we're having a G-side is a case where that the people have no means of escape. You're not providing them a means to escape. That Egypt's not providing them a means to, or another people's not providing them a means to escape. And when you are launching military attacks and indiscriminately injuring civilians. So what's going on in Gaza, and Israel is in a position where Israel could go and say, hey, release our hostages. We can put pressure on you through through blockading, through choking off supply lines and stuff like that. Um, and then, but once you are launching weaponry and missiles in there, and you are hitting buildings that are later on to be shown to not even have housed any of what would be your enemy, that's part of committing a G-side. I usually don't go live this time, so like wonder if my algorithm. But hey, if you're over on YouTube, click the link. Come on over. I'd love to chat with you. The link is. Oh, let me get this closed down real quick. So the link is going to be tinyurl.com/cd-guest. Hop in the box. I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, it's me and my British timing. It's got to be like early morning your time. That's crazy. Who playing COD? I'm not playing COD.
Oh, because we can hear the clicking of your controller.
Oh, yeah, no, because I'm using the Xbox controller, but to like use the internet to look up things. So that's why it's making those noises.
They've got weather where she's at, so the internet isn't the greatest right now.
Well, it's not that it's the weather, it's that I don't know what's going on, to be honest. Because I moved to a newer phone, thinking that maybe it was my old phone, but then that's still messing up. And the only thing I could think of is that it's the extension that I have for my Wi-Fi. Because me in the main house, the Wi-Fi works perfectly. But then when I go outside to my outside place, which is not very far, it's problematic. So maybe something to do with the extension I have. I don't know. But it's really
It's because the outside place doesn't like people from Canada.
right. I'm not joking. Ever since I got back to the UK, I've been having internet issues. Even when I was at my dad's house, didn't once feel this way when I was in Canada. So yeah, maybe you're right. It's really annoying because like I have a great setup. I have a beautiful setup, much better than the one I had in Canada. The only problem, fucking internet.
Fucking internet. Well, you just sounds like you just need to move back to Canada and stay there.
Well, I will be going back in August, but then I might be coming back to England.
But yeah, let's see if anybody wants. You know what? Let's see. Maybe we can. Let's see what other background can we run? We can run God is God. The Christian God is a sick fuck. We can run that background.
You do have some of the funnest ones. I will give you that.
Sam, why is it wrong to follow the teaching of Jesus? Well, come on up and we'll talk about it. I'll send you an invite. Come on up. We'll definitely talk about it.
You know what? I'm tempted to do a prompt that says, how do you know God isn't the devil?
You should.
That would be really funny.
Yeah, so the issue with following the teachings of Jesus is one, the teachings of Jesus are not unique to Jesus, right? Everything that Jesus taught, literally everything that he taught, is either found in Ben Sirach or it's found in the Torah itself. He taught nothing original. Second, Jesus instituted made the law even stricter. Jesus instituted thought crimes, so no longer are you now just required to actually go and like murder somebody, but now if you even think about it, you're guilty of the sin. Jesus, the whole idea of the crucifixion is just gaslighting that throws you into Stockholm syndrome. An all-powerful God is not required by any constraints. So, all-powerful God, there's nothing necessary for them. Everything is unnecessary. And it is the case that God just desired the crucifixion. It's not required. And I don't think we should be putting people into Stockholm syndrome and making them feel guilty because, oh, I accidentally did this little sin, but oh no, Jesus crucified for me. I think it's just ridiculous. We shouldn't be doing that to people.
What do you say to those that like try to bring evidence for like the resurrection?
Will, if you think I'm a Zionist, I'm not a Zionist. You're goofy. Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So what do you say to people that like bring evidence for like the resurrection?
Mateo, go ahead. Just give them a warning, please. And for those in chat who's arguing Israel and Palestine, this isn't the debate for that. So if you're going to argue that, can continue to argue that, then mods are just going to start muting you. It's not what this debate's for. Anyways, what were you saying, Emily?
I was saying, what do you say to people that say that they have evidence for the resurrection?
So what you'll do is you'll ask them for the evidence, and all they're going to point to is in Acts where, well, first they'll try to say, well, the apostles, the disciples, right? And you're going to say, oh, well, where's the evidence of that? And they're like, well, the Gospels. Well, you need to remember the Gospels were anonymously written, right? They weren't even given a name till hundreds of years later, right? So the Gospels were anonymously written, and they would just need to prove that Matthew actually wrote Matthew, that John wrote John. And they're not going to be able to prove that because nowhere in any of these texts does it say, I, Matthew, saw this. In fact, we don't even hear any mentions of the Gospels at all until Justin Martyr. Justin Martyr is the first person who definitively references the Gospels, kinda. He calls them the Memoirs of the Apostles. We do get Papias, who is an early church father. He kinda references Matthew and Mark, but the reference that he gives, we don't have his writings anymore. His writings have been lost, so we don't have them. But we get the quote he made from a church historian named Eusebius, but Eusebius is a known liar. He admits in his own writings that he will lie for the church, and if there's anything that makes the church looks bad, he will intentionally alter or just altogether leave it out. So Eusebius says that Papias said that Matthew was collecting a bunch of like banging quotes that Jesus was making. But that's not what Matthew is. Matthew isn't a list of quotes that Jesus made. And then Papias also said that Mark was a interpreter for Peter, and that later on he decided to write down, from the best of his memory, a bunch of the stories Peter had told him. But that doesn't line up like either, because the Gospel of Mark is just the Gospels. It ends there. It talks about nothing about Peter and his afterlife, or not his afterlife, but after Christ. So they just don't line up. What Papias supposedly said doesn't line up. So just ask him for the evidence. So the Gospels are going to have to prove that Mark wrote Mark, Matthew wrote Matthew, or not Matthew, that John wrote John and Matthew wrote Matthew. Mark and Luke are not disciples, not apostles. They weren't present. They weren't privy. And then the next you're going to hear is, well, the 500 witnesses. Well, that comes from Paul. And Paul in Acts says, and I was told there were 500 people who also saw the resurrection. So Paul isn't even a secondary source. He's hearing hearsay, and then he's passing on the hearsay. And so it's the case of they're going to have to provide, is there any evidence that this happened? And they're not going to be able to provide any. And then you'll hear a bunch of other claims. You'll hear like the Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin has been debunked. It's a 13th century cloth, has a 3-in-1 chevron weave, which did not exist until the 1100s. It was found in France. It's been carbon dated to the 1300s. Back in the 2014, there was a study that was done by some Catholic scientists that tried to say that there was blood on it, but when other scientists went to peer review it, they found some issues with the methodology, and so the people that conducted the study, they redacted it, which is bad. And then you'll hear that in 2022, there was an x-ray study that was done. However, the people who did that same x-ray study, they were part of the 2014 study. They're Catholic. It was funded by Catholic money. This x-ray study they were doing has never been done on anything else, and it hasn't been done on anything since. But even in that study itself, and what the study's trying to say is it's not blood, that when Jesus was being resurrected, he gave off radiation. His body gave off radiation, and that's why there's no blood on it, because it was the radiation. Preston, why are we talking about the damn snot rag? So yeah, it's fake. You'll hear things like some Ron Wyatt claims. You'll hear they found the blood of Christ on Golgotha. That's not true. Bringing up Deconstruction Center. I don't know if Deconstruction Center intentionally came up.
What about the tomb argument?
So the issue with the tomb argument is you're going to need to ask them which tomb is it, because we don't know which tomb. There's 3 different tombs. But if they're going to say like it's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, they'll just need to provide evidence of it. And there's just no evidence of it. But there's 3 different tombs, and the reason why the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was chosen is because Emperor Constantine, who was the first Roman emperor to be Christian, he legalized Christianity. His mother went to Jerusalem and just started pointing out a bunch of historical sites. And one of them was, oh, that formation over there kind of looks like something. That's it. But yeah, so yeah, it just comes from Constantine's mom. There's no evidence to support it.
Yeah.
Man, I'm surprised nobody's wanting to come up and debate. We've got 120 people watching over on YouTube. Christians, come on up. The link is tinyurl.com/cd-guest if you want to defend your argument that the Christian God is indeed not a sick fuck. I would love to hear your argument. I'd love to hear it.
They're intimidated.
They are. They're scared. Well, as of late, God hasn't even been sending his B crew. God's been sending his Z crew and like a bunch of fetuses.
Yeah, they need to put out their A game, man. What's going on?
And it should be easy because they literally have the Holy Trinity with them. This should be a knockout of the park. They should be able to come up here and give me a simple explanation for why God is not a sick fuck.
Isn't this supposed to be what God wants? Spread the word.
Right.
They should be wanting to do that. They'd be like, "Ooh, a non-believer. Let's go up."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's your challenge, guys. We're open. We're here, ready, wanting you to make us believers. Come on.
I think they know that they can't. I think they get up here. Oh, we got somebody over on Video Ninja. So if you want to hop on over to Video Ninja, I'm I'm gonna need to, I'll need to do some muting over here on uh TikTok so the
Yeah.
chat doesn't hear an echo. But yeah, let me get two debate.
Okay.
Get two debate brought up. Let me get
Alright,
this.
I'll go hop down and I'll find my way over there then.
Okay, sounds good. All right, two debate, are you there? Oh, two debate has shifted. Go bring up Jacob. Jacob, are you there?
All right, two debate, are you there?
What's up, dude?
Oh, Jacob, are you able to put in earbuds so I don't hear an echo? Are you there, Jacob? All right, Jacob is not here. Two debate, are you there? Well, try this again. See if we can. Two debate, are you there? Two debate, are you there? Let's try completely reloading the page. Right, we'll get Emily brought in. How you doing, Emily?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, so it's working. So I should be able to get two debate. Are you there? All right, two debates not speak, so we're going to hang that one up. We'll go to Jacob. Jacob, are you there? Jacob, you are live and on the air. Man, you all did not make Emily jump off of TikTok to come over here for you all to not even talk. Let me check your, because yeah, you've got things. I don't know why you're not talking, Jacob. But we'll go back over here and we'll try two debate one more time. Two debate, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, okay, I can hear you. Emily, could you hear two debate?
Yeah. There's no echo on my end, is there?
All
No, I
right,
don't
no.
hear it.
All right, chats, let's get let me get a yes if it sounds okay, but we're going to get started. Two debate, how old are you?
I'm 27.
And are you a Christian?
I'd say so. Born and raised. I
Wait,
haven't really
Alright.
read the Bible all the way through, but I definitely have been to Bible school.
I just wanted to make a note to you, sir, but I can't see any of your backdrops, so you obviously the guest might be able to, but I just won't be able to see anything that
Yeah,
you bring up.
I can't.
yeah,
either.
they won't.
No.
Yeah, they won't be able to. Unfortunately, if they have like another device, they'd be able to go back and look at it. But that's why I read the scriptures. So what is your strongest argument for Christianity being true?
Honestly, I'd say personal testimony. I think honestly, one of those things is, in some of my darkest moments where I've had my fiance leave me and I lost my job. The only kind of thing I really kind of could do is turn to Christ, and it helped give me a sense of renewal and more or less about seeking that it can get better, right? Like the thing that prevented me
Let me
from.
ask you. Well, let me
Hmm,
ask you a question though, right? So, what
yeah,
about in other religions though, when they also claim personal testimony for the
yeah.
reasoning why their religion is true, right? If that's what your argument's going to be, then you also have to validate that when
Yeah.
they use that as their claim as well.
Well, this is an interesting prospect, I've studied, Hindu mythology, if we want to say it that way,
Hmm.
or texts, but it's they have a concept of having a, supreme deity or supreme god, and all other deities fall under different, I believe, different aspects of the supreme being or supreme creator per se, right? So that's
Well,
something
yeah,
where
but the
I say,
question the question isn't though, are deities real? The question
mm,
is, I'm saying Christianity is false. What's your argument for Christianity being true? So the idea
oh,
of Christianity being
yeah,
true is couplefold. One is you have at least have the belief that Jesus died and was resurrected for your sins. You could go into a little bit more detail in
yeah,
that depending on what your denomination is, but that's the very least, right?
yeah,
And the second thing is, in order for us to know that this happened, he had to have fulfilled messianic prophecies. So, like when it comes to the personal testimony, if that's what's keeping you on this side of breathing in oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide, I mean, that's well and good, but that doesn't give
yeah.
me evidence for Christianity itself being true.
I agree. I see how that can be. I think maybe what I was trying to do is take a step back and say that, every belief system or belief of God or a greater being is what I think our Creator wants for us, right? Whatever we
Yeah.
believe in, say science, whatever things that we turn to in the times that we need to justify our existence, right?
Yeah, but what about the people? What about the people though who are in these horrible they're gone as low as they can go,
Yeah.
and they decide to take it upon themselves. So there's no deity involved. They take a look at their situation. They have an eye-opening moment, um, and they're like, you know what, I need to do better. No prayer was involved, nothing. They're doing it on their own.
Mhm.
Thus, they don't have a belief in a deity, or sorry, this doesn't help with a belief in a deity. Like I said, they would just be as valid. So I just need so there's no symmetry breaker here. We've got the same symmetry going on. So what's a symmetry breaker that makes Christianity true?
I think it's as true as every other belief system, right? I think the thing that brings people together more than to divide is, um,
Wait, did you just say
Islam
every
is
other belief system is? Did you just say Christianity is as true as every other belief system?
pretty much, right? This is
Well,
where it
that's a
comes down to.
heresy. Like you're a
Yeah.
heretic. You're going to super hell. Like Jesus is going to look at you and say, "You combined me and said I'm just as true as every other religion." You're going straight to super hell. Like those atheists, they're going to like just hell, but you're going to super hell. You're going right to the bottom of the lake of fire. I'm going to
Well,
put you in
it wasn't
cement boots.
the intention wasn't to be a betrayal of Jesus. The intention is um, to accept that his sacrifice came after, right, all these other things. Well, that's why I brought up Islam, as Islam came after Christianity, and
Yeah.
they still believe in, a monotheistic God and believe in Allah.
Yeah, they also
And
believe that the moon was split in half. Do you believe the moon was split in half?
no, it's we have science, right? And this is where
Right. Well,
I think that,
hold on though. Hold
yeah.
on though. They believe that when Muhammad was receiving the Quran, because they believe that is the direct word of Allah. They believe that the sperm comes from between the backbone and the rib cage. Right. Like this isn't
Mm,
just true. Right. It doesn't come.
no,
There is no place in your ribs where sperm comes through. So we can
yeah,
use this and say, look, the Quran is blatantly wrong. It gives out blatantly wrong information. Right. So it's
right.
not the same God. Like Muhammad just wrote a book. It didn't come from Allah. It didn't come from the same God. Um, and
Well, like
so I guess what I just
the
need is
spark of
why do you
creation.
believe? But
Yeah,
the question that I
like
need though is what is your evidence that Christianity itself is true? And I think you're just trying to hinge on this personal testimony, and I'm just not convinced. And there's no symmetry breaker with it.
okay. I think
Also,
okay.
both will can't be true at the same time, right? So you have to point out why Christianity specifically is true because they both can't be true at the same time.
Well, two things can be true at the same time. But
Well, Christianity and Islam are contradictory.
I
So
think
you can't believe in Christianity and then argue for the truth of Islam if there are contradictory aspects between the two.
Hmm.
mm, well, and I think it's an interesting point I want to bring up is the people of the book, right? Like I've been to mosques and I've prayed and I've done a bunch of
Hmm.
different stuff and I've gone to like Hindu temples and stuff with my friends. I think, I think all of these different ways to explain the natural sciences and our life around us were just the best explanations at the time, right? Like, you ever ask your parents, "Hey, can
Man,
I
this
do this?" They
guy's
say no.
just
I just
man,
told you no.
you're just digging yourself like every time you say that, like you're putting Jesus right back on the cross. Like this time you put him on the cross and you didn't use steel nails this time. This time you used iron nails because God's allergic to iron. And you're just pounding those iron nails back in. Like the whole idea, and the reason why Emily mentioned that it's contradictory. What is the Islamic belief of Jesus?
Did they don't. I don't know if they said he was a prophet or a messenger, but
Yeah, they
not. That's
believe
not.
he was.
Yeah,
They believe he was a prophet. Do they believe he was crucified?
I don't know that for a fact.
No, they don't. They don't believe in the crucifixion. They believe that's one of the things that was changed. They don't believe in the crucifixion. They don't believe in the resurrection. And because in Christianity, these are pivotal to Christianity that he did die on the cross and that he was resurrected for sin and to atone us and to save us, these are the clear contradiction between Islam and Christianity. So they can't both be true. Only one of them can be true. Well, one of them out of the two, only one of them might be true. To say can be true is wrong. Might be true, but there's a
Yeah,
third option. Both of them are wrong.
I
Yeah.
I think something it's been interesting for me in my own testimony is I've always wanted to go to church even as a kid. Like, my parents weren't very devout, but
Well,
I
so and
wanted
I'm
to
I'm, I'm
go
so sorry. I'm
experience.
so sorry, but I'm here for an argument for why Christianity is true,
Yeah.
and I'm not getting that. Like, do you have
Okay.
any arguments for why Christianity's true?
The thing,
Um.
personal testimony isn't really going to be valid when we're trying to build an argument.
Okay. Okay. I think perhaps what we could say that makes Christianity true is that Jesus is a real person, was a real person, right? And there is, third-party testimony and writings of the person. May he be an idea
I
or,
don't. Fine.
a
Hold
greater concept. I'm sorry, you're
on.
cutting off for me. I don't mean to talk over you.
Well, I just wanted to stop, but because I don't think there's an assumption that anyone disagrees necessarily that Jesus wasn't a real person. I think that people can agree that he was a real person, but him being a real person doesn't necessarily prove that he was resurrected. And the point about religion, especially within Christianity, it's going to be centered around the fact that he was resurrected, because that's the aspect of the religion that we're talking about. I just wanted to clarify that.
Mm, mm. So whether or
Like
not
for
he truly did
example,
rise from the dead 3 days later type of scenario.
Yeah, because that's going
yeah,
to be Christianity.
Right. And what was the evidence of him coming out of the tomb?
there is none. The
There
only
is none.
testament we have is the Bible.
Mm, I know. And the same concept for being in the Garden of Gethsemane. So it's I think this is
Yeah.
where the concept of Christian faith comes into play. Where this is where they ask to have a faith, but I think having.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to Jacob. We're not getting anywhere with him. Hello, Jacob. Are you there?
What's up, dude? Yeah, you
Hey,
hear
I'm
me all
doing
right?
good. Yep, I can hear
What's
you.
up?
Not a whole
You
lot. How
just,
old are you?
I'm 24.
And are you a Christian?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, what is your argument? I want your strongest argument and your best evidence for Christianity being true.
Well, did you hear about someone called Flavius Josephus?
Yeah, what did Flavius Josephus say?
Flavius Josephus. You know that he was like a very
You're probably going to
early
be
Jewish
quoting
historian,
Antiquities of
right?
the Jews. You're probably going to be quoting Antiquities of the Jews, book 5 or book 22.
Right. Well, there's 20 different books, but you do know that he does mention Jesus and what he did, right?
Yeah,
He's
which
like, because you just said that there is no evidence outside from the Bible.
yeah, so when we read Josephus, so when we go to Antiquities of the Jews, book 18, not book 5, book 18, the Testimonium Flavianum is what you're talking about. Now the Testimonium Flavianum actually supports our view versus your view. So what is going on in this is we have a situation where Pilate has used money from the temple and he's doing something with water, and the Jewish people don't like this, so they go and they attack Pilate. And Pilate tells his soldiers, next time I go out, I am going to I need you guys to dress up like civilians, but hide daggers in your cloak. And if they cast reproaches at me again, I'm going to give you a signal, and I need you to take care of the riot. And so he goes out, and they start casting reproaches, and I'll read exactly what Josephus says about it, right? And it says, and he says, but they boldly casting reproaches upon him, he gave the soldiers that signal which had been beforehand agreed on, who laid upon them much greater blows than Pilate had commanded them, and equally punished those that were tumultuous and those that were not. So these soldiers didn't give a fuck. They were attacking every Jew present. Nor did they spare them in the least. And since the people were unarmed and were caught by men prepared for what they were about, there were a great number of them slain by this means, and others of them ran away wounded, and thus an end was put to the sedition. Now we're going to skip one paragraph, and we're going to go to the third paragraph. About this same time, also another sad calamity put the Jews into disorder, and a certain shameful practice happened about the temple of Isis. So we have these things that are talking about these horrible events that are happening to the Jewish people. However, the paragraph I skipped is what you're referring to. It's called the Testimonium Flavianum. The Testimonium Flavianum is what's called an interpolation. Do you know what an interpolation is?
You tell me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so back in this time period, the printing press wasn't invented, so they had to literally copy everything by hand. So it's extremely easy.
Yeah.
It's extremely easy to accidentally maybe have some scribal notes that would have been written off to the side, and it's easy to accidentally get those added into the text. Or it's also extremely easy to just add stuff yourself. So the middle part, so this ends, so we'll go back to the first paragraph.
So you're trying to tell me that everything that is written in his book, right? I'm talking about Josephus. Everything that's written in his book could be true, but that one part that you want to argue might actually, in your point of view, is certainly wrong. And it's certainly added.
Well, hold on. I'll tell you why. Hold on. Let me tell you why. So I'm going to read this narrative again, and this time I'm going to add in the interpolation, the Testimonium Flavianum. I'll add it in. Now, keep in mind, Josephus was a practicing Jew. He wasn't Christian. He was a practicing Jew. So let me go ahead and read this, and I want you to tell me if you notice something that sounds off here, right?
Go ahead.
And since the people were unarmed and they were caught by men prepared for what they were about, there were a great number of them slain by this means, and others of them ran away wounded, and thus an end was put to the sedition. Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross. Do you see how we're talking about like these horrible things that are happening to the Jewish people, and all of a sudden we have this narrative about this Jesus character that just doesn't fit. It's out of place. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I still don't see where you're going with this.
Yeah, so that initially, the narrative change is why historians initially started looking at it and going, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't write like Josephus. This isn't how Josephus writes. And then then they looked at who pointed this out. The first person to ever point this passage out specifically, he was a historian named Eusebius. Now, Eusebius is a known liar. And in fact, the first time we ever get mention of this passage specifically is when Eusebius is writing, "Let us make use of the Jew Josephus." And then he quotes it. Now, the big issue with this is there were 5 or 6 other church fathers before Eusebius who quoted this same book. But they never talk about this Jesus passage. They're quoting it because Josephus writes about John the Baptist. And Josephus is saying some funny things about John the Baptist. But none of them bring this up. If Polycarp, Irenaeus, Ignatius, if any of these early church fathers would have mentioned this, it would have been like, I'd agree with you. I'd be like, holy shit, Jesus is mentioned in 70 by Josephus, but it's not mentioned until Eusebius much later. Another issue is, are you familiar with what stellometry is?
What about? Wait a minute. You're gonna tell me in a minute. What about Tacitus? You ever
Well,
heard about
let's
this
finish
figure?
up
He
with
was a great non-believer.
yeah, well, let's finish up with Josephus real quick, then we'll move on to Tacitus. So,
Right.
yeah, so what stellometry is a type of data science in which it looks at commonly used words. And it defines authorship. Now, the way we use common words are like a fingerprint. You really can't change how you use common words, even if you like. For example, have you ever heard of a man named Robert Galbraith?
No, I haven't.
Right, so Robert Galbraith is an author who writes crime fiction. So he writes crime fiction. However, thankfully, due to stellometry, people have had a hard time finding out who Robert Galbraith is. Nobody, like, there's no record of this Robert Galbraith. And so people were able to discover that Robert Galbraith, had actually written another extremely popular works from the UK. It involves, I believe it's The Boy Who Lived, Harry Potter. She wrote Harry Potter. It's J.K. Rowling. Robert Galbraith is J.K. Rowling, but she wanted to ensure that the J.K. Rowling name stayed with Harry Potter. She wanted it only associated with the Wizarding World, so all of her other writings are under a pen name of Robert Galbraith. And even though this is a complete narrative change, it's crime fiction, different writing styles and stuff, they were able to find out it was her because, again, the way we use common words are like fingerprints. They're unique to us, and it is extremely difficult for us to change those. So when we run stellometry on a lot of these texts, to include the testimonium, we know that it's Eusebius, because it comes back as Eusebius. When we compare it to Eusebius's writings, it is Eusebius. When it comes to Tacitus, and this one I'll actually be able to share my screen. This one, I'll share my screen. You guys, let me get it opened real quick so I can make sure I'm sharing it with you guys. This one here, I'll be able to show you guys. You guys will be able to see it. Let me get it opened up here on screen. Go with a window right here. So, do you see that window that just popped up?
Yep.
All right. So, when you look at that window, you see the red box on the left. So, that was changed to say Christioni. Now, if you look there, you'll see where it looks like there's 4 letters and then there's a gap. If you look in there, you'll see an eraser mark. And this whole manuscript, this is the earliest manuscript of Tacitus. You're able to see this. You're able to see this full page. You'll notice that you don't see that eraser mark anywhere else. Now, during this time period, you weren't supposed to erase anything. Erasing things was bad. It was frowned upon because the only way that we could keep authenticity was by making sure we threw away anytime we made mistakes. So that says Christioni. Now, do you see the letter in the blue boxes? You see that letter in the blue boxes? Those letter in the blue boxes. Yeah, those letter in the blue boxes in Latin is what the RI looks like. That's what the RI looks like. So that red box should, if it did initially say,
It should look like a blue one.
Yeah, it should have the blue one in there, but it doesn't. It used to say Christioni. And in this passage specifically from Tacitus, he's talking about how these Christians were like a little T group. They had caused some instigations, possibly the fire in Rome, some other stuff. Now, what you'll also bring up is a part where he goes and he mentions Pilate. Well, it turns out that we run into the same issue with that passage that we run into with Josephus, except it's from Tertullian. Tertullian is another church father. He was the first church father to use Latin. He's the reason why the Catholic Church now uses Latin. And again, nobody mentions Tacitus until Tertullian points out, hey, we have this passage from Tacitus. Now, can we definitively say it was Tertullian? No, we don't know who it was, but we do know that when we compare the part that's talking specifically about Jesus and Pilate, that it's not Tacitus, because when we run stellometry on it, that passage pops up as a completely different author. Now, we don't have the writings of whoever wrote it to compare it to.
So you absolutely, by any means necessary, try to deny or not only the existence, maybe not the existence per se, but because you did admit that a person such as Jesus walked the earth probably about 2,000 years ago. But by any means necessary, looking into small details such as erased maybe 1/8 of an inch letter, right? You try to dismiss the entire Christianity.
Well, it's not erased. It's not the fact that it was well, it's not the fact that it's erased. That's not the way we do manuscripts. When you copy manuscripts, and if you made a mistake, you were to destroy the manuscript and start over. That's how you keep authenticity. Now, it is the case that. Right, hold on, but it is the case that the only reason why we have Josephus, the only reason why we have Tacitus, is because the Catholic Church held on to these manuscripts. These were kept by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has every reason to edit the text. The Catholic Church, unless you are Catholic or Orthodox, many Protestants don't trust the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church has been known to do some shady stuff behind the scenes. But it is the case that when we use stellometry, which is a peer-reviewed data science, it's a peer-reviewed data science, that we do know that it doesn't pop up as Tacitus at all. In fact, that passage refers to Pilate as a procurator. Pilate wasn't a procurator, he was a prefect. It also makes the statement that the Christians are, because that statement says that the Christians took responsibility for the fires in Rome. So if you're going to agree that the Christians started the fires in Rome and they were little terrorists, by all means, make that claim. But also when we compare it to Suetonius, who was a contemporary of Tacitus, Suetonius writes about a group of people who were there was a group of Jews that are being kicked out of Rome because they were instigating and starting riots at the instigation of a man named Chrestus. Now, this man named Chrestus, when Suetonius writes about him, he writes as if he's on the ground. Like if it was modern day, he'd be on the ground with a blowhorn, calling for these riots, this call to violence. So
even that's what we do in European languages. You do realize that, right? That you cannot use the American or English way of thinking about writing even passages from centuries ago, from 2,000 years ago. Like that's the way. Even if he lived way past Jesus' crucifixion and his resurrection.
I never brought that up. I didn't bring that argument up.
But my point is this: if you're saying that he writes in the present tense, because that's kind of how I understand what you're trying to say here. You're trying to say
no. That's not what I said.
They write in the present tense as if they are.
No, that's not what I said. What I said was when Suetonius writes about a group of Jews who are being kicked out of Rome, right? Because they have been doing abominable things. And they did these and the words are at the instigation of Chrestus, right? That's what he says. That's what Suetonius says.
Mm-hmm.
At the instigation of Chrestus. The way Suetonius writes it is as if these Jews are doing these abominable things and Chrestus is there on the ground with them. Like he's there doing it with them. He's egging them on. He's pushing them forward, right? But the issue that you run into, right, is the case that I've been able to show, right, that we have interpolations in both Josephus and Tacitus. Stilometry, which is, again, a peer-reviewed data science, shows that both of these passages are interpolated into. Tacitus, with the Christians portion, seems to line up with what Suetonius says. Now, the issue that you run into is there's another person, another historian named Pliny the Younger. Pliny the Younger lives in 111. The whole reasoning for the Christian persecution stems from the fires in Rome because Nero tried, supposedly, tried to blame the Christians for the fires in Rome. And that's what kind of started the persecution. But that was in 65. So we bumped to 111. Pliny the Younger is a governor in modern day Turkey. And Pliny is important. Pliny is second in command of Rome. Emperor Trajan refers to him as his secondist. He's a second in command. Pliny the Younger was the lawyer for the Roman emperor, for like 3 Roman emperors. He was the Roman emperor. He was a lawyer. He was a senator. At this time, he's the governor. And he comes in contact with Christians. And he writes to Trajan and says, hey, I've ran into... Now, real quick, where do you live? What country?
I live in Poland.
What is a popular sport where you live?
Probably soccer.
Okay, so if let's say I am writing to you and I know that soccer is very popular there, and when I write to you, it would be
Right.
expected that I say, hey, I saw this soccer game, right? But if I was to go to you and start writing to you, and instead of saying, hey, I watched this soccer game, I started explaining the game in great detail. I started going in and saying, yeah, there was X amount players. They were kicking this black and white checkered ball into these net thingies, right? But I know what soccer is. I know what soccer is. But I'm writing it to you as if you don't know, right? But you should know because it's a popular sport there. You would be like, why are you writing it to me like this? This doesn't make sense. So when Pliny is writing to Emperor Trajan is the emperor. He should know who the Christians are. And when Pliny writes to him, he writes to him like he doesn't know who the Christians are. He's like, yeah, I found these group of people. They call themselves Christians. I don't know anything about them. And then he goes into detail. They meet once a week. They sing hymns. They take vows to not do violence. And he's just writing all these things that they do. And he had to torture them. He ended up torturing them and unaliving some of them. And he feels bad about it. He's like, these are nice people. I kind of feel bad about doing this. How do you want me to move forward? And Emperor Trajan says, leave them alone. Like, unless they are actually committing crimes, just leave them alone. So at 111, we know there was no persecution, but this again contradicts the idea that we have the Christians being little terrorists. Pliny says they're peaceful people, but Tacitus writes that they're terrorists. So which is it? Are they peaceful or are they a little T group, right? These are reasons why it is in the Christians' best interest to just acknowledge that Tacitus and Suetonius are writing about a group of people called Christians who are following a man named Chrestus, and that they're not Christians, because then you have to acknowledge that they're terrorists.
Yeah, but you do realize that even if they're writing Christus or Christ, or I mean, it would probably supposedly mean Christ. Even if there's a different letter, right, like an E or a Y, right, or the point that you try to brought up with the letter being erased, right, you do realize that at a different point in time in different parts of Europe or different parts of Mediterranean, that's normal. Like, and we were outside of what you would say like the German sort of Anglo-Saxon languages. It is normal to have a different writing and different dialects that mean literally the same thing. For example, in Poland, in Polish or Ukrainian or Russian, the letter Y, the way you would pronounce the letter Y, means literally the letter J, right? Like J and Y for us is the same thing. You see what I'm saying? Like, just
Yeah, but
because
the
there's some
issue.
sort of error in writing doesn't mean it's not the same thing. I know you're
Well,
trying
no,
to
the
say that.
well,
Go
but the
ahead.
issue that
I
you're
know
yeah
you're
the
not trying to. Yeah.
Yeah, the issue that you're going to
Because
run
now we're
into
just
though is
cut off
hold on. What we're talking about is preserving the text, right? If Christians
Mhm.
and Christians were understood to mean the same thing, right? Which I could get behind. I can be behind that. You then just need to explain why did they change it in Latin? Why did we have a manuscript that had it saying
Because languages
Christians?
evolve.
No, no,
My
no, no. It
grandma who
isn't. Hold
speaks
on, hold on, hold
Polish.
on. Well, hold
Yeah.
on. This isn't a case of them taking the Latin language from
Hmm.
one manuscript and as they're transferring it to another one and them saying, "Hey, I'm making a change here." And just so you know, whenever things like that happened in text, that's what marginal notes are for. Whenever they would make changes like that, they would make a marginal note and they would say, "Hey, see over here, I made a change because this is how we now." They would make a marginal note noting the change, right? That way, then, when people are reading it, they can look at the marginal note and go, "Oh, that makes sense." But the other manuscripts are kept with it so they can see if that happens, they can see the progression.
Right, what's the
That's
time?
not what
What's the
happens
time
here, though.
difference? What is the time difference between one manuscript and the other?
We don't know. This is the earliest manuscript we have of Tacitus. We don't know what the manuscript before it is. This is just the earliest one we found. And we're literally one scribal error
All right.
from
Well,
not having this.
Tacitus probably has been around. Wait, let me double check this right now.
Well, it's a manuscript,
Tacitus.
so we know it's not Tacitus's actual writings.
So are we talking about Tacitus' original writings or something that could be Tacitus?
Well, no, it is
Or
Tacitus's
original writing.
writings. It is Tacitus. He
So
was
is
born
it?
in
So is it or
55.
not? So he was
Wait, say
born
what?
around 55. So
Yeah, what I'm
he was
saying is
born.
no, what I'm saying is this isn't like so we don't have the actual manuscript, the actual papyri or parchment that Tacitus wrote on. We don't have that. Like manuscripts are not like the writings.
That's even better.
It's not
That's
like the
even
actual
better on
parchment
my.
that the writer had, right? It's
Well, that's
copies.
even
It's
better
copies of
argument
it.
for me. So since you said that there might be an error in rewriting
It is an
the
error. It
original
is an error. It's
text,
not might
right,
be. It
right.
is.
So well, if even if it is, then that's even better. If that makes my argument even stronger.
It
Because
doesn't.
if it's an error, then how could you rule out that he's not talking about the Christ?
Yeah,
Why?
because okay, yeah. Because I mentioned earlier when it came to upkeeping manuscripts and ensuring things stayed authentic, what was the protocol for when you made a
I
mistake
understand.
on a
I know.
manuscript?
I get it. I get it. I get it. But see, even if because look, I'll give you an example. Prime example, the most modern example to the um, manuscripts that we're talking about that are dating probably about 1900 years backwards. So my grandma, who was born in 1950s, and her mother, who was born in
Mm-hmm.
1920s, 1910s, right? They already have a different style of writing in the European languages. Like this is a
I'm
very
not. No,
common
no, no.
thing.
I'm not concerned
Why?
about the style of right. Listen, Jacob.
And maybe
You're.
maybe
Hold on.
if
Hold on. Hold on. You're trying to. you're trying to equate two things. You're comparing apples to oranges. This isn't a literary change of writing. This is clearly somebody, and if you want, you can go and the whole manuscript, the entire Annals, Tacitus' book Annals, is available in manuscript. You can go look at the manuscript form, and if you go and you look through the entirety of it, hold on. If you look through it, you won't see any other marks like that. It is only in that one location. If you get a chance, go look for it. You won't see that happen anywhere else but right there. And again, this isn't the case of a literary change or how we're writing. This is clearly somebody going to a manuscript, and they are either copying from another manuscript. They're either copying from another manuscript, and as they're writing it one-on-one, they forgot to stop, and because they intended to change it, right? They intended to change it, and they forgot to stop, so they decided to go back and erase it and continue on, or they weren't copying a manuscript, and they just decided to take that manuscript that already existed and erase it themselves and try to change it there. It could be either of those, but this is not a change in literary style. That's not what this is.
Wait a minute.
It is a clear edit of the manuscript.
Let me see something. So that's a chapter 15, verse 44, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yep, 1544.
Yeah. I'm trying to see. I'm trying to find the original manuscript here. I don't know how much time left you've got. I got all day if you want, but
In fact, I can bring something up because we do have in this, we do have cases. Let me get this brought up because we do have cases where here we go. So if you look on this one, you'll see where there are marginal notes. You'll see throughout the whole thing. You'll see marginal notes throughout the whole thing, right? So you'll see where you'll see a letter and then above them, you'll see some writing above it. Those are like what marginal notes look like. And then off in the margin, you see other marginal notes, right? But when it comes to the Christiani, we don't see the marginal notes with that, right? There's none.
So, I'm trying to look this up here, but I don't know if you've mentioned this, but Tacitus, the Annals, right? Or Annals, whatever you pronounce it. Like, that was not copied by the Christian scribes.
That what?
That was not copied. Like, the manuscripts were not copied by the Christian scribes.
Oh, how do you know that? How do you? Hold on. How do you know that?
I'm trying to read about it. I'm trying to. You brought up a point, so I'm trying
to.
Who
was holding on? Who was hold? Where? Hold on. Who was holding on to that manuscript? Who was holding on to it? Who had it? Was it found by? Was it found? What was a secular person in hold of it, or was the Catholic Church itself in possession of it? It was found the Catholic Church. It was in possession by the Catholic Church. And again, this doesn't change the fact that we know through stellometry that the passage about Jesus is an interpolation. We know that through stellometry.
Well, anyway, it's an interesting conversation, not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. That was interesting.
You got anything else? Got any other arguments?
I'll save your YouTube channel because I found you on accident. I was just scrolling through YouTube and I was like, man, I gotta try to make my point here. But well, I'm not gonna change my beliefs. But I'll save it. I'll definitely come back at some point.
All right, I appreciate it. Give me a subscribe. Anyways, it was nice talking with you. You have a good day.
All right. Hopefully you find Jesus.
Look, I was about to say, hopefully I find Jesus. Yeesh.
Yeah, I was really trying hard to track that conversation, but I just couldn't help understanding how this was an argument as to why Christianity was true. I was like lost in that whole argument.
Yeah, after this, you and I can have a Discord call after this, and we can definitely talk about it.
Yeah.
Anyways, we don't have anybody else here, so I'm gonna hop back over to TikTok. If you wanna hop back over there too.
All right, I'll be there.
All right. Man, oof. Some people's kids. How you doing, Tara? And everybody else who's been gifting. I appreciate it so much. I do have a super chat I do need to read really quick. Let me go get that up real quick. So it was a $5 super chat from Black Smoke 3113. Keep up the good work and maybe consider see if we can get this brought up. Oh, I can't read all of it. Oh no. And maybe consider allowing guests call in to support our side. Generally when I do these, for the most part I do one-on-one. Normally I'll have Hanji up here. But Hanji is more of she's a co-host. She has some valuable input to put in, mainly when it comes to like the Greek and stuff. But normally it's just me, so I try to keep them one-on-one. And Emily, can you leave a comment in chat? Sometimes when I'm on sometimes when I'm on OBS running this, there we go. When I'm on OBS, sometimes it makes me opening up my multi-guest a little finicky.
I'm here.
Yep, I gotcha. But yeah, so normally I do one-on-ones, and I'm really just here for debates. Emily is up here today because Emily is a good friend of mine. Emily and I have been friends for quite a while now. And Emily, we've got some more people on TikTok right now, and I know you stream on TikTok. Do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about your platform real quick?
Yeah, so I do regular lives. I do a variety of different topics. Have been for a while. I've been focusing more on like feminist topics and AB and all those kind of topics recently. However, I am trying to expand my knowledge in the philosophy area, specifically within God debates. So I have been expanding that, especially within philosophical arguments, and obviously doing theological arguments as well.
Oh, hold on. You just said all that, and I forgot to unmute you on the TikTok side. So TikTok didn't hear you say. Do you want to go ahead and repeat that? I apologize.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, they can hear you now. That's my bad.
Okay. All right. Take two. I run regular debates, a variety of different topics. Lately I've been sort of focusing on like feminism topics. I do politics topics. I do AB. I do the LGBTQIA plus community. I do a range of different topics, but also I've been trying to also then dive into more philosophical debates such as God debate as well. So recently I've been expanding my knowledge in that area, specifically starting with philosophical arguments in terms of the existence of God, and then also expanding my knowledge on theological arguments like we just listened to as well, in terms of like, the Bible, the scripture, and elements relating to that. So that is my platform and what I'm wanting to proceed with in the future.
Hello. So yeah, now Yeah, and Emily's just trying to get a little bit more familiar with the theological arguments. Because if you're just jumping into theological arguments and you're not too familiar with them, it's extremely easy to end up accidentally cooking yourself. I've been there. I've every now and then I'll get a little brave and I'll decide I'm going to try to run maybe this philosophical principle just to see how it runs, and next thing I know I'll be like, man, I just cooked myself. But if you're on TikTok, like we have Harris, why does Jesus bother you so bad if you don't believe in him? The reason why Jesus is an issue is because we have Christian nationalism. We have entire cultures that were erased because of the spread of the Abrahamic faith, mainly Islam and Christianity, by the sword through disease and pestilence. Hold up, gotta do this puzzle piece. And so we've got these issues, and we have the case where the scripture is just true. And I think Emily agrees with me. We want people to believe in true things. We believe that the world is better off when we believe in true things and not fairy tales.
For sure. I think that we want to be able to be critically thinking about why we believe a certain thing. And it's all great if it gives you good feelings and everything. We don't want to take that away from you. However, why we want to be able to believe things that are accurate, or we're just spreading misinformation. And when we spread misinformation, that can yield a lot of negative consequences and yield a lot of harm. So we want to be careful.
Like for example, the worst argument that I've heard, I'm going to put this in a syllogism form, is P1, God created everything. P2, have you seen the trees? Conclusion, God exists. Like that is the critical thinking ability of many of you Christians out there. That's it. Look at the trees. Look at the grass. Yesterday, somebody asked me if I could see the air. Can you see the air? No, Harris, you completely missed what I said. I want people to believe in true things, and it's goofy. You're completely goofy and nutters if you believe that this person rose from the dead. It's goofy. It's ridiculous. And I do. I just want people to believe in true things. I believe that we are better off when we believe in true things and not false things. But Harris, I'll send you an invite. 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 15 states that if your faith is being challenged, you must be willing to come up for a defense. Oh, Chist Harris, why aren't you coming up? Like, don't be a coward. You're talking in chat. You got a lot of yap in chat. Come on up. You have the Holy Trinity with you. It's just us. It's 4v2.
Hello.
And literally,
Yeah,
like... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that, like, sure, we can sort of agree that maybe there are some, like, morality things that we can pull from the Bible that we might want to live by, although not all moral positions, because, as we know, all of the Bible's morality is contradictory. But you might be able to pick handed things that might make you feel good in terms of how to conduct your life. But as long as you are aware that it's not true, but you're just using it as a way to live your life peacefully, I don't think anyone's going to have an issue with that.
Well, I mean, look at this nonsense. Well, let me get that a little bit bigger. But look at this nonsense here. Right, so this is found in Leviticus 11. The rock badger, for even though it chews the cud, it does not have divided hooves. It is unclean for you. The hare, for even though it chews the cud, it does not have divided hooves. It is unclean for you. This is a scientific error. Neither of these animals chew their cud. Neither of them chew their cud, and the Bible makes the claim that they do, but they don't. In fact, the rock badger can't even regurgitate. It's impossible for it to regurgitate. They don't chew their cud. It is errors like this that are found in the Bible that make it problematic. We get other issues in the Bible. Let's see. Let's go find another scientific error. Harris, do you believe that the Earth is a globe? I'm just curious if he believes the Earth is a globe. Oh no, he's laughing. Emily, Harris might be a flat earther. Harris is a flat earther.
Oh no, please no. See, it isn't so.
No. See, this is the problem. This is the problem with the Bible. People like him are going to take the Bible and say, "Oh, the Bible says it's flat, so it must be flat."
Yeah, I mean, I think the most crazy ones are the ones that believe in like command theory as it relates to God and think that whatever God says is moral. And then like the crazy shit, you can say, well, what if God says to do this? Well, if God said so, then I'll do it. And it's like some unspeakable crime. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, so people are asking if you're from Australia.
Oh no, I'm British, but I'm also Canadian, so maybe it's the fusion of British and Canadian that makes it sound Australian. I don't know.
Are you a hockey fan by any chance?
I don't really watch hockey. I feel like I'm a bad Canadian for saying that. I know my Canadian brethren will be like, "You don't watch hockey? What?" But no.
I'd leave Canada too if I wasn't a fan of hockey. And then we get like this right here, right? So if so this passage that we're going to read is extremely problematic if you know that the world is a globe. Because if the world's a globe, you know that the earth goes around the sun, not the sun going around the earth. So this is in Joshua chapter 10. On the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the Israelites, Joshua spoke to the Lord, and he said in the sight of Israel, "Sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of," I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word. "And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies." Chat, do you know what would happen if the earth stopped moving and it stood still? I'd end up freaking somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Like, we'd have mass earthquakes, buildings would just crumble, civilization would just cease to exist if the sun just stood still suddenly. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous. The book is full of scientific errors. It's goofy. Yeah, in certain parts of the world would freeze. It'd just be a bad day. It would be a bad day for everybody. And we do have somebody back over on Video Ninja. I was hoping we would get somebody over here on TikTok, but nobody's over here on TikTok. Emily, you want to hop back on over to Video Ninja?
Sure.
All right. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Hey man, fine. I'm just shutting down my YouTube here.
All right.
Can you still hear me?
Yep, I can still hear you.
Awesome. So what's the point of the discussion today? I just got in.
Okay, yeah, so I am a firm believer in my co-host, Emily, is going to be hopping in here in just a moment. We believe... Oh, there she is. All right, just want to make sure. Emily, can you go ahead and say hello? Oh, are you here, Emily? Oh no, I don't hear Emily. Emily, come back in. We'll try that again. Yeah, so I'm an atheist. I believe Christianity is false, and I just want to know what your strongest argument or strongest evidence is that Christianity is true.
Okay. Um, so I would say it's probably a couple of things. It would be the clarity and unity of the Word of God. It would be my own personal testimony of 180-degree turn when I was not looking for it. And then it would be just the question of what are we, where did we come from? Those three things are all answered pretty specifically by the Bible. I'll start with my own testimony. I was actually born.
Yeah, well,
in a
so
Christian
hold on
household.
real quick.
And
And Emily, can
yeah.
you? Yeah, Emily, can you say something? Oh no, I don't know if Emily made it in here. Let me check her audio settings real quick. Oh, I see you. I can't hear you though. Um. Still can't hear you, Emily. So I don't know what's going on with Emily. Yeah. So real quick, when you mention the unity of the Bible, I think the issue that we're going to have there is I don't think we have unity. I think what we have with the unity is we have cases where the Gospels try to claim that Jesus fulfilled like part of a prophecy, but they ignore the other part of the prophecy. I believe we run into a big issue when we look at the early church with the Marcionites, with Arian Christianism, Christianity, not to be confused with Schnazis, but with Arian Christianity. There's the whole purpose of the Nicaea council, the first one, was to even decide whether or not Jesus was divine or not. The early church couldn't even decide if he was the Son of God or not. People were believing that he came down. We had Gnosticism. And I believe that, like, if there was this clarity of text...
I've been a Christian for long enough to only laugh at that claim. That's a ridiculous claim that the early church did not know if he was God or not. Have you not read Paul? Have you not read Peter? Have you not read the book of Hebrews?
What was the whole purpose? Hold on. What was the whole purpose of the Nicene Council? The first one what was its whole purpose, literally?
That was, and you're going to easily catch me off guard with this specific question, but my understanding it was to solidify what the Church Universal had been holding as truth for about 300 years. I don't have to go to the Nicene creeds or any of these 300 to 500 AD kinds of gatherings of Christians to know what the Christians believed in 50 AD. It's written down. So, everything that I need as a Christian has been written down before 70 AD. So 300 years later.
Well, yeah. So the issues that you're running into is that's not the case. And Emily, are you there?
Hello?
I can hear you. You're here. All right, we can hear you now. So the issue that we run into is it is the case though that like we have Marcion, right? And in fact, do you know when the first church father to ever mention the Gospels? Do you know when the Gospels are very first mentioned?
Let's see. We have just a second. I'm blanking on the disciple of John, but I don't take the church fathers as being infallible.
No. I'm not saying.
Have you read the Bible from Genesis all the way through Revelation?
Yes. But what?
Okay.
Hold on, but that's not the question. Hold on. This is
end of the Bible. Yeah. So,
but we're pivoting. Well, hold on.
About the specifics
where we're
of
at
church
though.
councils.
Well, no. This isn't a church council, right? The first person to ever mention the Gospels in a meaningful way was Justin Martyr in the 140s. the Gospels didn't exist. Like, nobody knew about them before 140. Justin Martyr was literally the first person to mention them. They aren't even named until later. Much later is when they get their names. Like, the idea that we've been having these Gospels since before 70 is just ridiculous. They didn't exist. We have no evidence of them ever being used before.
Okay, so what's your theory about how Christianity spread like wildfire across the Middle East and Asia? When did that happen? Why do we have all these documents, these epistles, and more copies and documentations than any piece of literature in the ancient world? What is your theory of how that happened, if it all just popped up out of nowhere at 140 AD?
Oh yeah, it's the case. Well, I believe that like the bottlenecking was the Bar Kokhba revolt, when the Jews were being kicked out of Judea. That's when we really see Christianity actually start to take off. But no, I believe that it is the case that when your religion does become the main religion in the kingdom that is kind of ruling the known world, and then from there it ends up being spread by the sword. It's quite simple to see how a religion would spread.
Well, Christianity did not spread by the sword until Constantine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
actually spread in spite of the sword. It spread in spite of being outlawed throughout the Roman Empire. It spread in spite of its leader.
How many
being
years do you think
crucified, and
Christianity
you've already
was?
talked to the
How many
people,
years do you think
secular
Christianity was
historian.
outlawed?
It was in spurts. It was not consistently and persistently outlawed, but it was outlawed. I would guess. Well, so Christianity was not outlawed. That's a loaded question, because it was not
Yeah,
specifically outlawed very many years, but it was required of many people to give, in many areas of Rome, to give a sort of loyalty to the emperor and declare him God, that basically outed everybody
yeah. So it's
who
not
wouldn't
Christian
do that. And
persecution.
Christians, right? But they had Christianity in mind. There were plenty of people who
No,
were
the law, the law,
happy
the
to
law.
say,
Hold
yeah,
on, the
yeah,
law.
the emperor is one more god among our
Well,
pantheon
hold
of
on.
gods.
The
But
law
the Christians were not willing
predated.
to do that.
The law predated Christianity. The law existed. Jewish people, long before Christianity was around, were being punished under this exact same law. Greeks, who refused to bow to the Roman gods because they wanted to keep the Greek gods, they were punished under this law. Literally anybody, because the law allows, so what the law allows, so there are two laws, and we get this from Pliny the Younger. If you've ever read Pliny's letters in 111, two laws. One law was it was illegal to meet in a group gathering without a permit. Pliny the Younger writes about how he had to break up a fire department, a volunteer fire department, while they are fighting a fire. He has to break them up and punish them because they did not have a permit to go fight that fire, right? And so they got punished. Some of them were unalived for this. He writes this in his letters to Emperor Trajan. So we have a case where we have these Christians that Pliny writes about in 111, and he doesn't know anything about them, right? So the idea that, Christians were being at least persecuted at least before 111, it just wasn't happening. He doesn't know anything about them. Pliny the Younger was the emperor's lawyer. He was a senator. He was, at this time, he's a governor in modern day Turkey, and he doesn't know anything about the Christians. And when he's writing to Emperor Trajan, he's writing to Trajan like Trajan doesn't know who the Christians are. And Trajan says, leave them alone. Like, unless they're actually breaking crimes, leave them alone. And he writes that the reason why he caught them, how he caught them, is because somebody had said, hey, there's this group of people over here, and I don't think they have a permit to meet. So that's why he arrested them initially. And so, yeah, so it's illegal to meet without a permit. And two, you can worship whatever you want. Rome didn't care. You just also had to bend a knee to the Roman gods. Now, is that law unjust and ridiculous? Yeah, we can all agree that it's unjust and ridiculous, but it predated Christianity. It wasn't made because of the Christians.
Okay. Well, many Christians went to their deaths, as you know, in the Colosseum, probably with many prisoners, slaves, whatever. But Christians went to their deaths uniquely because of that law, because they were not willing to bow the knee. They weren't willing to concede that there was any God or ruler of the entire universe other than Jesus Christ.
Do you have
But
evidence?
I'm not sure exactly how we got off on that. Freya, we were talking about the unity of Scripture just a few moments ago, and we've gone over to how long it was illegal to be a Christian under the Roman Empire. So I'm not sure how to.
Oh, because
you asked me what my reasons were.
Yeah, because you brought up unity in this, and then I brought up that there wasn't unity. I was bringing up that the fact that in the 140s, we have the Marcionite movement. We have the Gnostic movement, which stems from Marcion. We have Arian Christianity, which was the whole reasoning for the Nicene Council, because we had all these different schisms of Christianity, and not all of them believed. Like, for example, Marcion believed, right, and he taught. Now, he was never excommunicated, but he was deemed a heretic because he taught that Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, was this demiurge, and that there was another deity named God the Father, completely different deity, but there was a different deity named God the Father, and he sent Jesus down to save us from Yahweh, right? That's what Marcion believed. And in fact, Marcion's extremely important, because if you do your research, you'll study a book called the Apostolicon. The Apostolicon comes from Marcion, and these are where we get the earliest manuscripts of the letters of Paul. They come from the Apostolicon. And there's a scholar named Dr. Nina Lifsey. She actually writes a whole book about how Paul probably never existed. Paul is probably just a pseudonym for the Marcionite school. Now, there's contention that the early church made some modifications to it, but we have no earlier manuscripts of Paul other than the Apostolicon.
Do you believe that Jesus existed as a man on the earth?
I don't. I'm a mythicist. I don't even believe Jesus existed. But I wasn't going to argue that here. I wasn't going to argue
so
that
you're
here.
You're definitely on the minority of the scholars, the historical scholars with that. You are in a very small minority.
100%. I'm in a small minority. But does when people thought the Earth was flat, and people started pointing out and going, "Hey, I believe this is wrong," and they conducted studies, even though they were the small minority, did them at the time being in a small minority, did that make them wrong?
I guess we can argue minority majority all day long. That probably doesn't get us anywhere, but
no, it's just an appeal to authority.
So I'm not gonna go down that road anymore, but I do know that. So if you're in the line that you don't know if Jesus actually exists, like, he is the single most influential human to have walked the planet, and before he existed.
Yeah, and hold on, and before Jesus existed,
there's more documentation that Jesus existed than anybody else. No,
there's not. What? Hold on. What documentation?
There's more documentation that Jesus existed than that I exist or that you exist.
What documentation is there that Jesus existed? Go ahead.
Hundreds of witnesses.
Yeah, name them. Who's
not
the witnesses?
only witnesses who claim to see something, but witnesses. So Paul, who formerly Saul of Tarsus. You have James, the half brother of Christ, who did not believe him at first, and then after his resurrection, he came around and became his disciple. You have women who were regarded as not trustworthy in that time. The early church regards them as credible witnesses.
And where can I read their writings?
They didn't have any writings that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay. Okay, they didn't have writings.
Their lives
where can I read?
Recorded. Their writing.
Okay, so the issue that you're running into, right? All these sources that you're going to bring up are all going to be Christian sources, right? You mentioned like the persecution earlier, like with the apostles, right? The idea that these are crucified. Outside of Christian sources, we have no documentation of these individuals being executed. Like there's no evidence outside of Christian sources. These people that you're going to claim, there's no claim to their sources outside of Christian sources, but we should expect some. So for example, when we read about Jesus turning the loaves of bread into fish and feeding 5,000 people, and the fact that we have zero writings from any of these people, even in like a passing journal passage, is ridiculous. When we read in Matthew that when Jesus was resurrected, that the graves opened up and that the saints were walking in Jerusalem. We don't have any writings of this. In fact, we also have writings such as Herod writing about, or sorry, as Matthew writing about Herod executing the children. Yet we have no writings of this even happening. Something that Herod didn't even have the authority to do. It's wiping out an entire tax-paying group of people. And Josephus, who hated Herod, anytime the Herods as a whole, if they even got out of bed and had a bad hair day, Josephus was writing about it. But nobody mentions at all about this mass unaliving of children. We don't even have any writings of anybody who had their children unalive. We've got none of this. All we have are Christian claims, and these Christian claims have no supporting evidence.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. Let's see. So, yeah, I don't have an answer for the absence of claims for this. But I guess so. Would you allow me to weave a thread along the lines of your initial question?
Yeah, go ahead.
The initial question was why I believe that Christianity is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have Genesis through Revelation. We have this story of a God who is good and holy, who gives man free choice, and man chooses rebellion. Right there in the first chapter, we get who comes and throughout
Here, hold on real quick. You're starting to get robotic. Hold on, guest. You're starting to get robotic. I just want to make sure it's not on my end. Emily, can you say something real quick? I just want to make sure it's not on my end.
Hello? I'm here. Is it working? Can you hear me?
Okay, so it is, guest, your internet. Yeah, and your bars are low. Jaren's salami tree. I'd pretend to lag too if I was him. Yeah, you're starting to get like really, really robotic, so I don't know if that's your internet.
Is there a way can I just shut down my video, or do you not do that?
Yeah, you could. Oh yeah, you could turn your video off if you want.
I'm not sure if I can do that, but there's a little. Did that do it?
Yep, that did it. Okay, I can hear you. And real quick, let me read this super chat real fast. So, Black Smoke 3113, thank you so much for the $5 super chat over on YouTube. Judas of Galilee proves that the Lucian nativity narrative is false, suggesting Jesus wasn't and couldn't have been born in Bethlehem during the census. Thank you so much, Black Smoke. I appreciate your support. All right, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. So, this story, this narrative of a Messiah who would come and rescue humanity from our sin just gets clearer and clearer and clearer throughout the Old Testament. It never does a 180. It never changes. It doesn't contradict itself, all the way up until you get to the end of Malachi, where it's kind of like you can feel reading that book, this is not the end. We're waiting for something big. And then you have all these prophecies in the Old Testament that I know you've said they're not fulfilled in Christ. I'm not sure. This is one of my
favorite topics.
Yeah. So you have things like King David hundreds of years before crucifixion is invented.
Here comes Psalm 22.
Saying a thing, Psalm 22, yes, amen,
Ah.
that Jesus quotes on the cross. And in there, David is saying, they pierce my hands and my feet. They cast lots for my garments. Talks about them casting lots for my garments. There's just all these things, like the sacrifices. They couldn't have broken bones. And I guess all these things, even as I'm saying them, they could have definitely been falsified if Jesus was not a real person, as you think he was not.
Or, hold on. Or it could be the case where, and let's say I grant you, just for this argument, I'm going to grant you Jesus existed, right? Or it could be the case where Jesus is an apocalyptic preacher who is quite literally teaching people to go into poverty, right? If you remember, we have the story of the rich man that comes and asks Jesus, what can he do to be saved? And Jesus says, follow the laws. And he says, are you doing this? And he's like, I'm doing all of those. And then Jesus says, oh, well, go sell all your stuff and follow me, right? He is calling the people to poverty. And then he also says in a few passages where he tells them, this generation, which is like 40 years, he says, this generation shall not pass away before I come back with my kingdom, my angels, and my glory. He tells his disciples, hey, some of you standing here will not have passed away before I come back with my angels, my angels, my glory, and my kingdom. He even tells them, hey, when you go into this city, they're going to persecute you, and then just go to that city. When they persecute you there, go to that city, because you will not have even been able to have visited all of Israel before I come back with my angels, my kingdom, and my glory. But it is the case that the generation, the 40 years came and gone. He didn't come back. None of the disciples are still alive. And it is the case that they did so well in teaching in Judea that they had to go throughout the Roman Empire. So it could be the case that the people who had, and let's say I'm going to feed into a little bit of the apostles were persecuted. I'm going to look at a potential internal critique here. Could be the case that a lot of these people that saw the teachings of Jesus realized that they were duped. He was a fraud. He lied. He wasn't coming back. And they'd gone into poverty for him. They were following him and went into poverty. And now they're struggling. And so now the writers of the Gospels have to find a way to save him, to save face. So all of a sudden, these actual prophecies that were supposed to physically come true, well, they're not coming true. It's now spiritual. And when we're talking about these, but look, Jesus said, but go look at what David said. Now we're reaching into the Old Testament for anything that could even look remotely to something similar to what Jesus did, but we're only doing it partially. We're not doing it all, right? That's why when we look at Psalm 22, you're going to mention the my God, why have you forsaken me? And you're going to bring up where he was pierced. But what you're not going to bring up is where he calls himself a worm. You're not going to mention that. You're not going to bring up the rest of the stuff in it. When we go and we look at like Jesus riding on a donkey, well, that's all it was. We're not going to bring up how it mentions that it's a king riding in triumphant because he just won a war. And when he goes to wherever this place is supposed to end, Jerusalem, he's going to knock the war horse off of Jerusalem and stay the bow. We're not going to mention those. The Bible is full of half-fulfilled, partially fulfilled prophecies.
I'm happy to mention both of those. I'm happy to talk with you about both of those. The Bible is clear. The sum of its parts is truth.
Well, it's not. It's half-fulfilled prophecies.
You want to talk about Psalm 22 that you said I wouldn't mention, where he says he's a worm and not a man?
No, I did say you. Well, yeah. Go ahead, talk about it. Let me get it brought up.
You said I wouldn't mention that. Okay, I didn't.
Well,
I didn't
go ahead, bring it up. Yeah, let's talk about it. So when he goes, let's talk about the whole thing. So hold on, let's talk about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So are you familiar with how does David? Yeah, bring it up. How does David write in his Psalms?
Yeah, give me just a second here.
All right. So when David writes, and while you're looking up your scripture, while David writes, he does these things where he is like the most. I'm a firm believer that David was the first emo kid. it was David, because he goes through this thing where he's giving us a lamentation. He's lamenting, and then he praises God, and then he laments, and then he praises God. Now, why does he do this? Let's take a look into David's life. David, during much of his kingship, he was at war, or he was under threat of war, but he was a war king. He was at constant war. He also was responsible for the raping of his wives. He was responsible for the unaliving of his children. He is responsible for the unaliving of 70,000 Israelites. It is the case that every time David makes a mistake, David isn't punished according to the law, right? God sets the law aside and makes David watch as other people are punished, right? So these are things that are important. So starting in verse 1, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night find no rest. This is David. This isn't Jesus. This isn't fitting Jesus. Yet you, now here we go. We're going to get in praising God. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our ancestors trusted. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried and were saved. And in you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am, and this is the part that we're talking about with him being responsible for other things. But I am a worm, not a human, scorned by others and despised by people. All who see me mock me, because he knows that the Jewish people don't like him. He is not liked because he's brought them so much problems. They sneer at me. They shake their heads. Commit your cause to the Lord. Let him deliver. Let him rescue the one in whom he delights, because God likes David and he punishes everybody else. David never gets punished. They get punished, right? This is David talking about himself, the issues he has with his life. He knows God favors him for some weird reason. God favors him and he can do whatever he wants because the people are going to get punished, not him. And that's what he's saying here. God saves me and they get punished. That's why they don't like me. They know that I'm going to be the one who gets away with it. Yet it was you who took me from the womb, who kept me safe on my mother's breast. On you I was cast from my birth, and since my mother bore me, you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near. There is no one to help. Many bulls encircle me. Many strong bulls of Bashan surround me. They open wide their mouths at me like ravening and roaring lions. Again, David was a war god. He knew there were people trying to come in to conquer him, right? I am poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd. My tongue sticks to my jaw. You lay me in the dust of death. Because he's just tired. He's been at war so much and he's tired. And even since he was a kid, he was at war, right? He literally had to run from Saul.
Can I interject an interpretive guideline? Can I interject my understanding of biblical hermeneutic?
Yep, go ahead.
That is that when Jesus spoke to some of his disciples after his death, he rebuked them and said, "Oh, slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken." Oh, am I robotic right now by chance? Should I shut my video off?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. And so Jesus gave us this hermeneutic that the scriptures were written by real people, real circumstances. They weren't making this up. You're right. This is David. But it points to David and somebody beyond. It points to one greater than David.
Where?
David was not poured out like water and all of his bones out of joint. His strength was not dried up like a potsherd with his tongue sticking to his jaws, claiming that God was laying him in the dust of death. Dogs encompass me. A company of evildoers encircles me. They've pierced my hands and feet. I count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. If you can't see the crucifixion of Jesus Christ in this passage, I can't help you.
What does poured out like water mean?
Exactly what happened to Jesus on the cross when they pierced his side. Blood and water poured out.
No, poured out like water. You can do a Google search. Poured out like water is a term of I'm extremely exhausted. As a matter of fact, we'll just do this search real quick. So
When
a
did
phrase
they
I
divide
am
his
poured out
garments
like
among
water.
them? When
Hold
did
on.
they cast lots for David's clothing? When
Ca-
did they
do-
taunt David and say, God, the Lord delighted in him, let God deliver him? They did that to Jesus. David
Casting
is
lots. Hold on.
foreshadowing and prefiguring this, and it says
Listen.
in
Hold on.
Peter,
Listen. Hold on.
Okay.
So I have it up.
I got ears.
You.
I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. So you can't see it, but on YouTube right now, I have the phrase "poured out like water" is a statement of extreme exhaustion. Now, casting lots for clothing isn't new. It's not something that is new, right? It is the case that whenever you captured anybody of anything, you were always in fear because having a part of your enemy's clothing, anything that they owned,
Yeah, when was David captured by the enemy and his clothing cast lots for?
when was it? No, it's something that he is worried about.
I
Like
said,
if
when
this
was
happens,
David? Yeah, if this is David, it didn't happen to him.
yeah. So when
David
he's
was
saying,
not
"Let me go,"
flogged within an inch of his life so that he could count all of his bones. That was Jesus who was able to count his bones.
yeah, we'll go. No, so do you know how Lamentations happen? This is how he's feeling. He's writing how he feels, right? So he says, "I am poured out like water."
Yeah, I agree completely.
Hold on. Right, so I am poured out like water. So he's exhausted. All my bones are out of joint. So we have that. For dogs are all around me. A company of evildoers encircle me. They bound my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my cloths amongst themselves. This is what he's saying. Like he's over here and he's in fear of this. He knows that if he gets captured, this is going to happen, right? He's kind of speaking in, well, I mean, it's a psalm. The whole thing's like hyperbole. But this is him saying, like, this is what they want to do. They are encircling me. They are evil, and they want to, and when he's talking about his hands are bound, he can't go anywhere because he knows if he leaves, they're going to catch him. So he's literally bound and stuck where he's at. He knows that the enemies are staring and gloating him, and he knows that if he leaves, they have already divided his clothing and stuff. Because when you are putting somebody to siege, right? The idea of sieging them, which is why the enemies are encircling him, the idea is we're going to starve them out, and then we're going in. So he's saying they are so convinced of this, they've already cast lots for my clothing. They've already done it. He knows that as soon as he's captured, he's done for. Right? But then he goes and says, and this is how we know that this is something he's worried about happening, because then he says, but you, O Lord, do not be far away. We're starting praise again. Oh, help and come quickly to my aid. Deliver my soul from the sword, my life from the power of the dog. Save me from the mouth of the lion. So these are things that he's worried about. And he's saying, but you can stop this from happening. You can save me from this. So this is why we get this praise of the Lord. Then he says, from the horns of the wild oxen, you have rescued me. I will tell of your name to my brothers and sisters. In the midst of the congregation, I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you offspring of Jacob, glorify him. Stand in awe with him. Right? And so then we get this where he's ending it with praising God. And he's saying, because look, I'm going through these horrible things. I'm a horrible person. Up here at the beginning, he's talking about the horrible things that he has done to his own people, right? Inadvertently, he didn't mean to, because every time he makes a mistake, he tells God, punish me, right? When he found out his wives were going to be raped, he goes to God and says, whoa, I sinned. And then Nathan says, yeah, but now the Lord says he's going to punish your child too. When he realized that the plague was going to cause 70,000 Israelites to be unalived, he said, whoa, they didn't do it. I did it. I took the census. He tries to get the guilt back or get the punishment on himself, and God says, no, I'm punishing them. So the people hate David because they see him being okay. He quite literally married Bathsheba, and the kingdom, because her next child was Solomon, the kingdom clearly went through her line, right? So this is all about David. It's not about Jesus at all. This is just a case of them going and saying, oh, yeah. Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Oh, look, David said that. He's and if we can tie it to David, even better. We got to tie it to David, even better. So I'm just not convinced
All right.
that it's.
Can you give me a minute to respond or so?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're bringing up a lot of interesting things here. I agree with you completely that this is David. I believe it's in 2 Peter. It gives us another hermeneutic in that the prophets of old did not always understand everything that they wrote. They wrote down things that they didn't that resonated with them, but they understood meant something more than just what they wrote it down. And so it says that they searched trying to understand the things that they themselves are writing down. So David wrote this down. It was a real event in his life, but he understood that it was far bigger than him. And that's why this language, I mean, why would you talk about your enemies piercing your hands and your feet? I mean, you certainly could if that's what he was feeling. That's a legitimate thing. But is it coincidence that all of these things apply to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? And then at the end here it says,
hold on. In the Hebrew,
I was pretty silent for you while you gave a pretty long explanation of this. I'd appreciate another 30
all right, yeah,
seconds.
go ahead.
Okay, so here at the end of the psalm, it says in verse 27, or verse 26, the afflicted shall eat and be satisfied. Those who seek the Lord will praise him, or those who seek him shall praise the Lord. May your hearts live forever. All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations shall worship before you. And again, that's David. That would be a gross exaggeration if that was just David. David was the king of this tiny little Middle Eastern country. All the ends of the earth couldn't have cared less about whether David was delivered in this plight or not. This is a legitimate expression of how David felt, but it's pointing to something far bigger than him. And this is a very clear picture of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. I think this passage speaks for itself. You can say, no, it's not about Jesus. It's just about David. But the similarities are really striking. I mean, but if you are an atheist, you also believe in absurd luck and absurd coincidences, that everything could create itself.
That's not what I believe.
And
well,
so
hold on.
I'm
Now
not
we're
surprised
pivoting.
that
Hold
you
on.
don't- that you-
Now
that
we're
you
pivoting.
blow away these
Hold on.
coincidences.
Now we're pivoting, right? So, you do realize that the original Hebrew says nothing about him being pierced, right? The original Hebrew, in the Masoretic text, are going to look at where it says they bound my hands and feet, because you have ka'aru and ka'ari, which is what the we see in the Hebrew. The Masoretic text, the Dead Sea Scrolls have a misspelling of it in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They add an aleph in it, which doesn't make sense because it doesn't fit in any conjugation of the word. But it mentions that he was bound, right? The pierced is just a Christian apologetic. It's not found in the Hebrew. That's something that Christians have added for their text. But it doesn't say that in the text.
What does the Septuagint say? What does the Greek Septuagint say?
Yeah, the Septuagint gets things mistranslated all the time. In Isaiah 7:14, it translates ha'amah as virgin, when ha'amah just means a young woman. Betula means virgin. The Greek Septuagint gets mistranslations all the time. It mistranslates all the time. And I'm not going to go off of a Greek text when we should be looking at what the Hebrew says.
I wonder if the Hebrews who spoke both Hebrew and Greek in BC years may have understood the Hebrew well enough to translate it properly, or at least better than we understand the Hebrew today. I wonder if
Oh,
that's a
what?
possibility.
Oh, when do you think, are you referring to like the 50 plus Hebrew scholars that they had translate the Septuagint?
I'm referring to when the Septuagint, when it was penned. I'm assuming that those scholars understood the translation dynamic between Hebrew and Greek of their day
Oh,
better than we understand.
do you know when that portion of the Septuagint was translated? The
I
Septuagint
know
was
it was BC.
Yeah, so the Septuagint was translated over a period of about 400 to 500 years. It wasn't translated all at once. And by time we get to that time period, so you're going to hear a thing about like the like 80 Hebrew scholars. That was only for the Torah. The Torah portion of it was translated at the same time with all those scholars. The rest of it was translated by Hellenized Jews, who, and by this time, and when they were translating it, at the time, Parthenos in Greek meant a young woman. We have documentation of Parthenos in BCE at the time of it writing only meaning a young woman. It didn't mean a virgin, but we do see a clear distinction that by time we roll into the 1st century, even in Greek writings, Parthenos had a change in what it means. And in the 1st century, up into the 2nd century, it did have a meaning change to a virgin. But at the time of the translation of the Septuagint, it also at that same time meant a young woman. It didn't mean virgin.
All right, you lost me somewhere in there, but my understanding is that the entire Septuagint was at hand before Christ came on the scene, and the Jews, even if it had been translated after Christ came on the scene, the Jews had no incentive to translate that word as a virgin. They understood the original language and they put it into Greek as virgin. They understood this.
Oh, no. The English translates it as virgin because, again, when Parthenos is being translated in the probably in the 2nd or 3rd century, when that portion of the Septuagint was being translated, possibly the 4th, but when it was being translated, Parthenos, which is the Greek word used, meant a young woman. It did not mean virgin at the time. They had other words for virgin that they were using. Now, when we stroll into the turn of the century, as language does evolve and change, and we do have a case of where Parthenos at this time period now did mean virgin. Yes, they were translated as virgin, but that's not what it meant at the original time of its translation. This is something that historians agree with.
Okay, so who changed it to virgin? You're saying it's just the English translation of the Greek Septuagint.
No. What I'm saying is that the word itself, Parthenos, the word itself, the meaning of it changed.
I got you now. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good.
I'm with you now. Okay. All right. All right. Well, I'll take your word on that one. I haven't.
Well, don't take my word. Just you can research. I mean, I'd love to. Yeah, just research it, and I'd love to have you back up.
I will check into it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All righty.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that's it for me, I'll go with in peace. But I'm enjoying the conversation.
Yeah. No. So when it comes to Psalm 22, though, I'm just not convinced. I'm convinced that it's just David lamenting about himself. Are there any other prophecies you'd like to take? As a matter of fact, let's go bring one up because it's one that we did bring up. So one that we talk about is
okay.
What is your understanding? I think this is important. What is your understanding? And this isn't me trying to like insult you or anything. What is your understanding of what the Jewish Messiah is supposed to do?
Well, he is supposed to do a number of things, and this is why the Jews rejected him, is that he is supposed to rule in the seat of David. He is supposed to destroy the enemies of Israel. He's supposed to usher in an age of peace. But he's also supposed to save the people of Israel. He's supposed to bear their iniquity. He's supposed to heal their diseases. He's supposed to be their righteousness. And so you see these two sides of the Messiah put forth, sometimes the two different sides put forth in the same chapter. And so, yeah, just reading it. So back to your question, my understanding is he's supposed to do many things. He did the most important thing already in his first coming, and he will bring in the things that the Jews were hoping Jesus would bring in at his second coming, which is peace, an age of prosperity, the lion laying down with the lamb, so forth.
Yeah. So in short, what he's supposed to do is, so he's supposed to be a king through the line of David. So he's supposed to be king through David, specifically through Solomon. It's supposed to be through Solomon. And as king, he's going to reunify the lost kingdoms, the lost tribes. They're going to be reunified because remember, after Solomon, they got lost, and then through Assyria, the northern kingdom of Israel got assimilated into Assyria, and they're the lost tribes. So he's supposed to reunify the lost tribes. And through the reunification of the lost tribes, he's supposed to usher in world peace, peace for them. Through this peace, through them, the world will look at Israel and will recognize that Yahweh is the one true God. And through that, there will be world peace. Now, that's just a basic overview. There's a lot more nuance to it. There is some scripture in there that does suggest that during this kind of world peace, it's only like world peace in the sense of the Israelites. It does give some sense. There are some passages in there that kind of hint at, and hey, the Israelites, anybody who caused you harm, such as Babylon and stuff, you get to return the favor to them. There's some of that stuff. Like I say, it gets a little bit nuanced. But that's the overview of it. Now, the issue with this is that Jesus was never crowned king. When we look at the bloodline, he comes from a cursed bloodline. In Matthew chapter 1, verse 11, it mentions a person named Jeconiah, but Jeconiah was cursed. God straight up tells him, you will never sit on the throne again. So we got that. Mary in Luke, it gives a completely different bloodline. Some people try to attribute that to Mary, and they'll try to claim it through the Levitical priesthood. But the issue with that is, because Mary was a Levite, her father was a Levite. To be clear, just because you were a Levite did not mean you were a Levitical priest. Not all Levites were priests. But when it goes through where it should mention Mary's dad's not mentioned, but that goes through the line of Nathan, not Solomon. And so these are just issues, is that David wasn't a king. He wasn't, it's because Mashiach, or the Messiah, means like anointed. So you have to be anointed. He wasn't a king. He didn't come from the line of Solomon, according to Luke. In Matthew, the line was cursed and never allowed to sit on the throne again, and never sat on the throne again. So, and then Jesus never reunified the lost tribes. I'm Jewish, and I don't know where my cousins are that are of the tribes, other than, even Benjamin, but we have, Judah and Benjamin, but I don't know where the other tribes are at. We have no idea who they are. Jesus never reunified them. The world doesn't know that Yahweh exists. There's still people today have no idea that Yahweh exists. No idea. They've never even heard of the Abrahamic faiths. And so I just think that Jesus just failed on all fronts.
Well, yeah, I would say if you were expecting him to do all of that in his first coming, then he did fail. But again, Proverbs makes it clear that there's a mystery, there is a riddle in the will of God, and we are to seek what he's doing. He can't fulfill both the role of a suffering sin bearer and a conquering king in the exact same instant. He did the suffering sin bearer the first time he came. And when he comes again, your people will be unified. The entire world will know that Yahweh is God.
But
and
the
I would
suffering
encourage you to...
Yeah, the suffering sin bearer,
Go ahead.
though, the suffering sin bearer, that's only in Christian theology. Like, that's not in Jewish theology. Like, the Torah makes it very clear that
All the
there
way
can
back
be
in Genesis 3, he's a sufferer.
How so?
The Bible, God speaking to Adam, said that he would crush the head of the serpent, but the serpent would crush his heel. So it's speaking of this suffering, but not a complete defeat. That
but when we go
Satan would
to
be done away with, but Jesus would not be.
Yeah, when we go to Genesis 3, where that's found in, right? So where you find that. So the question that we're going to have to ask, because I think this is going to be extremely important. Let me get this brought up on screen for chat to see, because this is something that gets brought up quite a bit, and it's found in Genesis 3 verse 15, and it says, starting verse 14, the Lord God said to the serpent. Now, every other verse, the serpent is referred to as the most like crafty of all the wild animals. So the serpent is clearly described as an animal in the passage, but he says, because you have done this, cursed are you among all animals and among all wild creatures. Upon your belly you shall go, you shall eat, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. So this is an animal, and we know that this is just an animal. It's not talking about like Lucifer, because does Satan have kids? Does Lucifer have children?
He does. Jesus told the Pharisees in his day that they were sons of their father, the devil. He has spiritual children.
No, but these are physical children, right? These are physical children, because, and what we do have is humans have this innate fear of serpents. They don't know why it is, but humans, like, we just have this innate fear of serpents. Yeah, we're scared of like other reptile and amphibians, but when it comes to snakes specifically, humans just have this innate fear of snakes. And when we go and we look at Near Eastern mythology, we have this tie to beings who have access to some type of immortality, whether it's an orb of immortality, but we have this thing with like a human having something linked to immortality and a snake trying to steal it. And this is found, we see this in Mesopotamian and Assyrian mythology. It's in there. Because humans had this like...
So this passage is one of the reasons I'm so thankful that God used your people to write the scriptures. And I believe this is why I believe it's inspired, is that it's so careful and precise in the wording. And again, the very first verse you're pointing out, this is a unique situation. Nowhere else, there's no genealogy of the son of mothers. There's no line throughout the entire Old Testament where you have the mothers listed. The mother had this child, and the mother begot this child. There's always the men. But in this one instance, it says your offspring, the woman's offspring.
It's the man's offspring.
The man's offspring, not the seed of the man.
Hold on.
I would put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring.
You're right.
And then there too, that word is not it's not a plural. In the original, it's singular. It's one of those words like seed that can be either singular or plural. depending on the context, but it's singular between your seed, singular, and her seed, singular. And so it's talking about this final showdown that is going to happen in the future. This is, humans are afraid of snakes. I actually just grabbed a black snake out of our chicken coop today. I wasn't that scared of it. But so snakes are real. We're scared of them. We're not any more scared of snakes than we are of spiders, or I don't know what. That's definitely not at the heart of this curse here. And the motif of Satan as the serpent continues throughout the Old Testament. It's incredibly consistent. Again, pointing to the divine authorship, that this is not just man making this up as he goes, or he wouldn't be consistent.
Wait, hold on.
With the pictures
Satan
and
is
metaphors.
Hold on. No. Satan isn't always. What was Moses' staff? What did it look like?
It was a serpent.
Yeah, it looked like a serpent, right? And they had to follow a serpent, right? So, like, to say that Satan, and as a matter of fact,
they had to follow a serpent.
Yeah, what was the rule when they were at war? What did he have to do? He had to hold the serpent up, and the Israelites are only winning when and this is just using your logic, right? The serpent was also placed at the temple, right? If you remember, this was placed at the temple.
Yeah, no, you're confused about that detail. That's okay.
What do you mean I'm confused about that detail?
Well, so Moses didn't hold up a serpent for them to fight in the battle. His staff only turned into a serpent for a very specific point in time.
Well, hold on, but it looked like a serpent.
Reason.
It looked like a serpent, though. That's the purpose. It looked like a serpent, right? In fact, during the time of Hezekiah, who was considered the most wicked king, he nailed the temple door shut, right? Or not Hezekiah, Ahaz, King Ahaz. Yeah. Hezekiah is his son, King Ahaz. He literally nailed the temple door shut, and he turned Moses' serpent staff into an idol, which is why when Hezekiah, his son, who's the most righteous king, became king, he destroyed the staff, is because it had become an idol. And he's like, nope, we can't have this anymore.
That was an
idol.
Different artifact. Moses' staff remained wood. You're talking about the bronze serpent that God told Moses to make in the wilderness when he sent the fiery serpents. And again there, what a glorious picture of the Lord Jesus Christ. He set a bronze serpent up high and told people to look. If they would just look at the bronze serpent, they would be forgiven and they would live. And that's what we're told to do to Christ. We're told that Christ
hold on. So the question, hold on. The question is, though, is if this is the case, if we're to look at a serpent for forgiveness, is a serpent representative of Jesus, or is a serpent representative of Lucifer? It can't be both. That's a contradiction. It needs to be one or the other.
I agree with you.
That's what I'm talking about. So in Genesis, the serpent is literally just a serpent. It's not Lucifer. It's just a serpent. Lucifer doesn't have kids. We don't spiritually step on snakes' heads. In fact, when we go and we read Gilgamesh, in the story of Gilgamesh, there is literally a snake who is stealing the plant of life, right? So like we've got like and then in Assyria, it's an orb of life.
So I don't buy the whole similarity equals plagiarism argument. If you want to go down that line, that's fine. I'm looking more at I'm staying within the scriptures in my argumentation. Yeah. There's lots of similarities between those ancient religions and ancient texts, and I'm not surprised at that.
Well, what I'm saying, though,
some of those writings are incorporated into scripture as certain Proverbs of Solomon. We know that he got some of his proverbs from Egyptian proverbs.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, though,
speaks to the universality.
Well, but what I'm saying, though, is that if Abraham, right, came from Mesopotamia, and this is a Mesopotamian myth, and we also have Assyrian myths, and they
Mhm.
all say to the same thing. It's not saying that like it was a plagiarism. It is just the case that in the Near East, with religions that are far older than the Israelite myths, we've got the flood happening. We have similar stories, right? And so I just don't buy
Yep.
that like this story with the serpent. I just don't buy that it's Lucifer. The scripture itself states that it's a wild animal. It doesn't say go back with your angels. Go back. It states it's a wild animal. Lucifer doesn't crawl upon his belly. I mean, in Job, Lucifer's walking on his feet, and God says to him and says, "Hey, what's up, buddy? I haven't seen you for a minute. What have you been up to?" Like, so this whole idea is
Yeah.
just kind of silly
So
to me.
okay, so the motif is that Satan possessed the serpent, and the serpent now is going to be a representative of the fall of man. And in the bronze staff, what is being portrayed there is that the Israelites deserved death. They complained against God in the wilderness. They had an evil craving. I think that was when they wanted meat. I don't remember the specific instance, but God was going to kill them, and He had Moses make this serpent on a bronze staff. Now, I don't know what your theory about that is, but it's very consistent with the Christian view of what Christ did, of what our condition as sinners is, what God's position as judge and king is, and then what His provision is. And that is that He sent Christ to be sin for us. Christ took on the consequences of the fall of man on the cross. He bore the entire brunt of God's wrath, so that when we look to Christ, we have life. And again, that motif is consistent all the way through the end of the book of Revelation, where it says that serpent of old is cast into the lake of fire, and it says specifically that serpent,
Well, yeah, but
Satan
that's
and the devil. It kind of
but yeah,
wraps
but
everything up.
that's presupposing, right? But the issue that you're running into, though, is that again we have for the majority of it. So you have this small story, right, where Lucifer, where this snake does this bad thing in this one story, but then every other time we get snakes being mentioned, they're all in reference to like doing good things, right? We have the Israelites are following a snake. Even John compares Jesus to that snake, right? That comes from John. John does it. The only time we ever get any reference to this snake
Where
in
does John
Genesis,
compare Jesus to a snake?
it's going to be in John 3:14. He says, and just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up.
Okay.
And whoever believes in him may have eternal life.
Okay.
So he's comparing serpents to the crucifixion, right? So you can't have it
Yeah.
both ways.
I just explained to you why that's an appropriate comparison.
Yeah, but what you can't do, though, is say
I just
that...
explained to you why that's not... Jesus is not the serpent, but Jesus represents... or the serpent represents rebellion against God and the fall of man. And Jesus took that title. Jesus was made sin. He took the curse of sin. He took the anger of God against sin. He took all of the curses pronounced in the Old Testament, everything from he that hangs upon a tree is accursed, to he that strikes father or mother is accursed. He took all of that curse on himself on the cross. That's why he cried out, "My
but
God,
what
my
you're
God, why have
forgetting,
you
though,
forsaken me?"
but what I'm saying, though, is you're taking where, and Revelations doesn't even say snake, it's referring to the dragon. Revelation is referring to a dragon. When it uses the term serpent, it's the dragon. So it's not even the snake in Genesis. A lot of people think it is, but it's the dragon in Revelations. But because it says of old, people jump to Genesis, but that's not what even it's talking about. But no, we only have this one instance where the snake, that's an animal, calls it an animal, is going to walk on its belly. Lucifer doesn't walk on his belly. That doesn't happen. Every other instance of snakes that are used in the Old Testament are used as a good thing. We have Moses' staff taking the form of a snake to eat other snakes. We have the Israelites following a snake, and this snake, the same serpent staff, is used as a place of worship, right? So it seems that the Israelites were worshiping. Worshiping's a strong word. I wouldn't say worship, but this serpent had a positive view to the Israelites. It wasn't negative, so it's not indicative of like Lucifer and stuff, right? So I think you're just going into where we go into Revelations, which is, I believe Revelations is a case of, again, we have things aren't coming to pass. Again, the people have been duped. Jesus lied. He's not coming back. And now we have everything suddenly having to shift from, well, he's not physically coming back, but now we have to have this new spiritual meaning. And I think Revelations is trying to go and say, hold up. Boom, boom, boom. It's just trying to solidify that. I'm not convinced. It doesn't convince me the snake in Genesis is Lucifer. I'm not convinced that that's a prophecy. We just have an innate fear of snakes. And how do you crush snakes in all the Near Eastern myths? You step on their head. You stomp the fuck out of their heads.
Yep, that'll work.
So I don't think
it's just again, it's the coincidences. It's the coincidence that it said that the serpent will bruise his heel. What does that mean? That's clearly metaphorical.
No,
clearly
snakes are hold on. Snakes are low and they bite feet. Right? I work for Amazon. And we quite literally had where I live, we have a lot of rattlesnakes, and one of my coworkers got bit by a rattlesnake because his place was out in the boonies, and he was walking up the driveway because Amazon doesn't let us pull up to the person's front door. He was walking, got bit in the foot. Right, as a matter of fact, right, where like your calf, where your Achilles heel is at, he like got bit right there. Because that's where snakes can easily reach you at. Because they're on the ground, right? So it's not like a metaphor. It's like literally the only place that snakes can bite you, unless in the case of rattlesnakes where they can actually get some oomph and strike, they can bite a little higher. But the idea that snakes are on their bellies and most likely going to bite your heel, right? But it's a physical thing. It's a physical thing that snakes do.
I think it's a striking coincidence, though, that it says the singular seed of the woman would strike him, would crush his head. If you're not able to understand it, I think if you can't understand these things, then that just means I genuinely don't want to disrespect you, or you've been very gracious with me when I didn't understand what you were talking about. I had no rebuttal for some of your things, and you've been very gracious to me. So I don't want to return evil for good. But I think if you can't see the symbolism in these things, that symbolism is just not going to do it for you. That you're just not going to see symbolism if that's how God chooses to reveal Himself. And so you have to you have to take a different tact to find out if God is speaking. And so I would begin looking at, why is Israel even a country today? Israel as a country should not even exist for all practical intents and purposes, as far as, not that they don't have a right to exist, but there have been so many attempts to squash your people Israel by emperors, kings, the Third Reich, and God has kept His promise that He made to your people, miraculously so. And it's very hard for me to imagine being a Jew and seeing all the miracles that have been entailed in keeping my people alive and saying, no, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is just a myth. He's just a legend. Thousands of other civilizations have come and gone, but my civilization has stuck around when it has been the focal point of satanic attack over and over without cause
We survived.
I think
Hold
the
on, hold on.
miracles.
So the
Go
reason
ahead.
why the reason why we have survived is, and there's a little bit of truth to what you're saying. The reason why we survive is because of the mythology, right? Is because of the belief of the Exodus, right? That's like the crux of Judaism, right? It's because of these myths have unified us as a people, and wherever I go I can find other Jewish people and we will be unified and tied because of these myths, right? But that doesn't change the fact that the reason why we have survived also is because we've had to go into hiding, right? It's because that we
I mean,
chose to take off
you're the
our.
only people who have been spread across the globe on 2 different occasions and come back to claim your homeland, a specific plot, a tiny specific plot in the Middle East that for whatever reason all powers of hell also want. All the evil people on the planet also want this little plot of land that God promised to your people, but God has kept it for you.
No, so when we look at so
significant.
hold on. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, if Hashem had truly kept his promise, right? If he truly had, it never would have been the case where we would have been through what we had to go through, right? But it is the case that do you know why Israel?
Could you back up and either clarify or restate? I may have misheard you or misunderstood you. You said if he kept his promises, you would not have gone through what you went through?
Yeah, the Messiah would have come already, right? The Messiah would have come. It would have happened. The people would have been reunified already, right?
I got
but
you.
it is, yeah.
Well,
yeah, but it is the case.
To our understanding, no.
But hold on. It is the case that the only reason why Israel is a nation now, and don't get me wrong, I believe that the Jewish people have a right to be in Israel. I absolutely believe that. However, the way it was done, I think it was horribly done. I think it was a case that the way it was done, if it was done by God, it was done in such a way that it was horrible. It causes quite literally the oppression of other people. The only reason why
not at all.
It does. The only reason why Israel became a nation again is because of the Holocaust. Was because it was the case that like the Jewish people had nowhere to go, and there were nations that were like, well, had the Jewish people had a homeland to go to, a place they called their own, this might have been avoided, right? So then they passed a resolution, right? But I think the way it was done was horribly done. It has caused the issues that we have between Israel and Palestine today are the issue of Zionists, specifically Christian Zionists, who are trying to push forward to hurry up and push forward a narrative where Jesus comes back, because we need to be back in Israel before Christ comes back. It's a Christian nationalism thing. It's not for the Jewish people. Christians aren't wanting this for me as a Jewish person. They don't care about the Jewish people. They literally only want us there so that their Messiah can come back. That's the only reason why. And now it's a case where, as is being mentioned, we are
pretty powerful, aren't we?
Yeah,
if we're that powerful, I would join my religion just to partake of that much power, that we can influence kingdoms and nations, not once, not 100 years apart, but 2,000 years apart. We can make a people disperse all over the world, and then against the general feeling of the whole planet, bring them back to not any specific place and call it Israel, the specific territory that Joshua and David and Daniel walked. The specific place where you can turn over stones and find a coin that dates back to the year of King David. The odds of that are just astonishingly small for that to happen once, let alone for that to happen twice. And the fact that God used something as horrible as a Holocaust to do it, I think that speaks to his keeping his promise about what would happen.
Wait. When you say God, hold on. When you say God used are you suggesting God caused the Holocaust for this to happen?
So that's a loaded question. The Bible makes it clear. God says, I'm going to mess up the reference, so I'm not even going to give it. But you can look it up. He says, I cause good and I cause evil. Is there calamity? Have I not done it? So God takes credit for everything good and bad ultimately. But he does, we are, as humans, are real, legitimate agents who have choice. So I believe that the Holocaust was predestined by God. It was ultimately masterminded by God, but it was, well, so the example would be Joseph being sold into slavery by his brothers. After Jacob, their father, dies, the brothers are afraid he's going to get revenge on them because he's the king of Egypt. And he says, don't be afraid, because what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Meaning that
So
God had a design and a plan.
So God set up a plan in order to keep his promise to the Jewish people by having us removed from Israel by the Romans to ultimately orchestrate the Holocaust so that we can go back into the land after 6 million Jews were killed.
So yeah, so that the way you're stating it, it sounds pretty rough. You are familiar with the blessings and the curses listed in Deuteronomy, are you not?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So that they already lived through that. They saw that when they were taken into exile in Babylon. And then when Pontius Pilate wanted to acquit Jesus, he said he washed his hands of him. And the Jewish leadership said, his blood be upon us and upon our children. And I believe that's happened. I believe that the Bible says that that both salvation and judgment come to the house of the Jewish people first and then to the Gentile. And so the Jewish people had the first opportunity for salvation and redemption. Some of them accepted it. All of the first Christians were Jews, but many of them rejected it. And so the punishment for rejecting God's Messiah also comes first and foremost to the Jews, and then it will ultimately come to the Gentiles who reject him. And
So
so,
the
yes, I believe that
Holocaust
every death. Mm-hmm.
So the Holocaust is punishment
Oh,
for
I'm breaking up. I'm gonna turn my camera off again.
okay. So the Holocaust is punishment for crucifying Jesus.
Um. So not exactly. I think it definitely plays a part in that. But Jesus, again, if you're familiar with the blessings and curses in Deuteronomy,
Mm-hmm.
you should not be surprised that when idolatry came, when the rejection of the Messiah came, that a curse would come also. And Jesus was approached by some people, some of his followers in his day, about two different catastrophes, one being a tower falling on innocent people, and one being one of the Caesars or somebody crucifying a bunch of, or not crucifying, slaughtering some Jews in the temple and spilling their blood all over the temple. And Jesus said, are these people any worse? Are they any worse offenders than you or anybody else? He says, no. But unless you repent, you will also likewise perish. And so the fate of the Jews in the Holocaust, it's terrible. I can't watch those documentaries all the way through. They're horrible. But that fate, unfortunately, will be like a garden picnic for those who ultimately reject the Messiah, because Jesus respects our decisions very heavily. And if we reject the God of light and the provision that he has given us, he will give us darkness and we will bear our own sin in hell forever.
So
And
do you
I
believe
would say,
that?
I feel, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you believe that Ava Braun's husband, Hitler, was ordained by God to start the Holocaust because it would cause the nations of the world to pass a resolution to where Israel would become a state and the Jews could officially return back.
I would not claim to understand the full scope of God's purpose in ordaining the Holocaust. I would certainly say that that is part of it, but I can certainly not say this is the entirety of why the Holocaust happened. None of us are wise enough to comprehend the ripple effect of all of these things, but certainly that's one effect of it, and the Jewish people have gone on to be a blessing to all the nations now that they're back in the land. Your people, the Jewish people, are at the forefront of medical and technology innovations. They are indeed, as God promised Abraham, all the nations.
Well, that's enough of that nonsense. Holy shit. Holy shit. I'm going to bring Emily back up on TikTok. Chat. Holy. Emily, did we just hear what I thought we heard?
Yeah, I was like lost. I was like, I can't.
No, you're good. I looked over. I saw that you weren't in there anymore. No, that's good. That was wild. Oh, Dugald, it'll be clipped, but the Holocaust was partially ordained by God so that Israel could be a state so the Jewish people could return home. That was wild. I'm going to see if Dugald's able to come up too.
Yeah.
That's crazy pants.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because he started talking about it. Because I brought it up. I'm like, hold on. So God caused the Jewish people to be removed from Judea just to later on cause the Holocaust so that we can return. I'm like, that sounds goofy. And he went on this whole long thing, and then he started bringing up, it was a ripple effect. Started bringing up, the curses and blessings in Deuteronomy, how they're blessings, they come to the Jews first. And that, the Jews, when they crucified Jesus, they said they were taking the blood of that on themselves, on us, because Pilate washed his hands. And from that, it was just a ripple effect to the Holocaust.
That just makes his God sound even more nutso. Does he not know that?
I don't think he does.
It just makes his God even more insane than he already sounded to begin with.
Yeah, so it's punishment for crucifying Jesus. It was, oh man. And then I think he realized the bind he put himself in. I think he found the self what he was saying. I think it finally caught up with him because I started to try to ask him some more pointed questions, and then he tried to wiggle out of it.
Wow. I've heard some doozies today, but that's a big one. That's a real big one.
Yeah, and like Fricklenberg said, instead of saying Ada Braun's husband wasn't a Christian, guess just doubled down. Like, that's getting clipped. That I'm going to short that. I'm going to make that as like its own thing. Like, fuck. And then he kept, as soon as he found out I was Jewish, he kept saying, and your people. I was like,
oh, not the your people.
Yeah, your people.
See, so much to say on that.
And real quick, Emily, if you want another awesome creator to follow, and this is for Chad as well, Follow Dugald. Give Dugald a follow. Dugald, if you want an amazing person that I've been friends with a bit, give Emily a follow. Emily hosts a bunch of debates on a wide variety of topics.
Got you. Already followed. Got you.
Gotcha, Dougal.
So, but man, that was...
I don't know what's worse, the ones who deny it happening or the ones like that you just had, who see it as divine will.
Right. Well, and it was... Well, and how we got there is we were talking about, the old Genesis 3 with the serpent. And I was like, hold on. If the serpent, which is only mentioned once, it's only in Genesis when like the serpent is referenced like in a negative aspect. Almost every other time after that, Moses' staff turns into a serpent and eats the other serpents. Moses makes a bronze serpent and he holds it up, and the Israelites are literally following a serpent. And when the serpent drops, calamity befalls them. John even quotes and says, as a matter of fact, I think I still have that scripture up. John even says in John 3:14-15, just as Moses lifted the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up. So that's like how we started doing this. And then he like did this weird pivot to Israel and Palestine. It was goofy. And Thinker, thank you so much. Also in chat, if you're not following Thinker, give Thinker a follow as well on YouTube. It's Archthinker. So go give Thinker a follow. She hosts amazing lives. So normally you'll have some of the creators like Dugald and others during the day. I do like the early night shift, and Thinker is putting in the midnight oil in that late night, early morning live. And so we are...
He's our third shifter.
Yeah, she's a third shifter. Thinker is the one who like comes in afterwards and is like, look at the mess these fuckers left me. But yeah,
we get them all wound up so she can take them at night.
Yep. But Thinker, thank you for absolutely smashing that. I appreciate it. Let me get my goal reset.
I owe her a personal thank you myself, Cyber, if you don't mind real quick. Thinker, thank you so much for modding for me the other day. I got the most likes out of my live than I've gotten in quite a long time because of you. So I appreciate you very, very much.
Thinker's lives are one of those. So I enjoy Thinker's lives. I enjoy the atmosphere of Thinker's lives. They're amazing. I'll often, when I get done going live, I'll just tune into Thinker's lives, and then I end up falling asleep because I usually have to work the next morning.
They go live on TikTok as well, or just YouTube?
Thinker does as well. And she's also on, again, YouTube is Archthinker.
Nice.
And then let's see who else we can get brought up. So whenever I'm running OBS, because I'm also dual streaming over onto YouTube, my multi-guest box on Live Studio, sometimes it's super slow. We'll bring up Jesus is Lord, Davitt.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing? Can I get your age?
18.
All right. When did you graduate high school?
When I graduated, 2020. I didn't graduate yet. I'm still in high school.
I'm sorry, what just happened?
Yeah, I'm still in high school.
But you're how old?
I'm 18.
Okay. What's your birthday?
2006.
I mean,
Nah.
TOA is going to be fine with it,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I'm 16.
Yeah, that's
TOS,
what I was
I mean.
thinking. Yeah, I'm like, as soon as yeah, he wasn't sure if he'd graduate. That's what caught me when he was like, I graduated in 20, and I'm like, oh, because you shouldn't have graduated yet. If you're 18, you should still be in school. You should still be in school. Maybe caught the
we're
tail end
graduating
of the
literally-
last year.
Right, we're graduating literally this month.
Yep.
That's wild.
You know what, though? Today's kind of been rough trying to get some guests up. You know, it's pretty sad when we have 13-year-olds who, one, not only have the courage to actually get up here and debate, but two, they are able to give better arguments, and then we find out they're 13. Oh, get off. We're going to bring up Qualia. This should be fun. How you doing, Qualia?
Hello. Good, how are you?
I'm good. Can I get your age?
Yeah, I'm 25.
All right. And are you a Christian?
Yeah.
And what's your strongest argument or evidence that Christianity is true?
I have great arguments and great evidence. I just want you to tell me whether or not you affirm the statement on the screen there that Christianity is false first.
Oh, yeah, I'll
Do you-
affirm that it is false.
Yeah, so that means you have the burden of proof. Give the argument that establishes the truth of that claim. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah,
I saw
yeah.
that coming.
That is how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. So in order for Christianity to be true, would mean that God needs to exist. In order for God to exist, I would just have a syllogism for you that show that God can't create anything. If God can't create anything, because time has always exists, we know that time, space, and are intertwined. Thus, the naturalistic world we have is what we would expect. So, premise one is going to be that. Do you believe that that creation entails a change of states of reality?
Wait, sorry, your first premise of your argument is a question?
Well, that's my premise.
Holy shit, you don't know how arguments work. Jesus
Well, I
Christ.
get. Well,
You know how to give an
hold on.
argument.
I'm just asking if you're going to contend it or not. It's not like a
Sorry,
question.
But your premise is a question. Do you think questions can be true?
Oh,
or
hold on,
false?
hold on. Let me
Sorry,
hold on.
answer my
Hold on.
question now, Slowboy. Can questions be true or false? Yes or no?
Hold on. Let me restate it then.
Answer my
Hold on.
question,
Hold
Slowboy.
on.
Yeah,
I ask it as a hold on. Quit unmuting. I asked it as a question because I want to give you a chance to do it. But yeah, I'll just put it in premise form. All creation entails a change of states. Premise 2, a change of states is the progression from one state to another. P3, the progression of states is time. Conclusion.
Sorry. That doesn't actually form a valid inference rule. You brain dead slow boy. What I need you to do is give an argument following a valid inference rule.
Oh, why doesn't follow a valid inference rule?
Sorry.
Hold on. Why doesn't follow an? Hold on. Why doesn't?
Sorry. I need you to just give an inference.
I did.
Sorry, you brain dead Spurg. You're face down, ass up right now. You're gripping the sheets. I'm blowing your back out.
What is
So
up
just
with
You're
the
not.
English?
Someone
What is up with the English?
your side characters are like piping up. I need them to be quiet.
This
Yeah.
is why I
Can you
I
not be
usually won't
English?
bring
What I need
quality
you to do
up.
is just give an argument that establishes the truth of the conclusion that Christianity is false. Try one more time, you Spurg. Yeah.
Can you debate without being
Anyway,
ableist? Is that
Can
possible?
you like go ahead and muzzle your side characters here? They're just like not.
No, I just want you to tell me what's wrong with the inference rules. Tell me how it doesn't work.
Can you repeat what I just said? You're dodging the question straightforwardly.
Yeah, you're saying that the it's not a valid inference rule. I just want to know why.
What is an inference rule before I answer the question? Look at him.
Yeah,
he's
the
fucking
inference.
popped right now. No, I asked what an inference rule is.
Hold on,
Slowboy,
I just want
keep
you.
up.
Hold on, just tell me why it doesn't follow.
Notice how you're dodging the question. Want to try one more time?
Can you just tell me what doesn't how it doesn't follow?
Look, you're choking on my rhetorical dick right now. So
Yeah.
just to be very clear, the question on the table is
Yeah, it's a
whether or
logical
not you
form
know
that
what
allows you
inference
to
rule is.
derive a conclusion from one or more
He's
premises.
Googling the answers. He's Googling the answers because he doesn't know how to form a valid inference rule. Jesus, he looks so bad
So
right now.
what's wrong with the
Given-
inference rule? Tell me what's wrong with it.
Given that definition of what an inference rule is, go ahead and tell me what inference rule your argument is following. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm using modus ponens.
Modus ponens, it's ponens. You utter slow boy. So if you're using modus ponens, then the first premise would be a conditional statement. But you didn't give a conditional statement, you brain dead spurg. So try one more time. Modus ponens is if P, then Q, P, therefore.
Philbros and their
Hey, hold on. Can
attitude.
someone muzzle this obese side character, please? Host, you need to muzzle.
Oh, sorry. No. This is.
Just to be
Hold
very
on. This
clear, I
is
don't want you-
Modus Tollens. Sorry, it was Modus Tollens.
Oh, it's modus tollens. So go ahead and give the argument again, because premise 1 did not fit the logical form of modus tollens. Try one more time, slow boy.
Well, just tell me what's wrong with it. I'll just kick you.
Wait,
I mean, I can just kick you.
What is the logical form of modus tollens? Go ahead.
Claudia, why are you so triggered?
Can someone
Yeah, that's
muzzle
what
this
I want to
obese-
know.
Why are you so
Someone muzzle
triggered?
this obese
Why are
woman?
you so upset and triggered that you feel the need
Now
to
they're
insult?
just projecting, host, because they're upset. So just to be very
No, I mean the fact that you have to
projecting.
insult because you don't actually have a credible argument shows the true
Emily,
nature
just
of you.
cut long ways. Cut long
Quality
ways.
has
You're
got
obese.
big
No,
feelings. I'm so
I mean,
mad.
do you, like again? That's the only way you think that you can win is by
Yeah, so
insulting.
just to
when
be
you
very
don't
clear,
even
Dugald
Because
asked
he
a minor
thinks
for
he's
nudes.
so big and
Dugald-
bad, he's so mad.
Dugald
Yeah,
asked a minor for nudes. So
Try
I
and
don't
make an
wanna,
argument without insulting. Can you do it, or are you too immature to be able to make a
Yeah, so
credible argument?
Just to be clear, if you're retracting, he has the burden of proof. So he's trying to give an
Yeah,
argument.
yeah. It's, why don't you communicate
So
like
you
an
just got blown
adult?
the fuck out, Emily.
How
You just
old
got
are
your
you,
back
Claudia?
blown.
What is wrong with you?
You
Claudia,
just got
how
your
old
back
are you?
blown out, Emily. I just blew
How
your
old are
back
you?
out.
How
You
old
just
are
got
you?
your back blown out. Holy
How
shit.
old are
I already
you?
told you that. I already answered that when I
It's a
first.
fucking
Yeah.
child.
You said you were 25. Why don't you act like you're 25? You act like 16. Dude's crazy.
So that's what he does. That's what he does all the time. That's why I'm always hesitant to bring him up, because that's how he always is. But what he can't do is tell me why it's wrong.
I mean, the ableism was fucking crazy.
All Philbros have that attitude. What is with the Philbros and that attitude?
I don't know.
I don't think they think that if they speed answer and talk really fast and then insult, they're going to intimidate you, but they just look like an immature child by doing that. I'm sorry, if you don't allow anybody to respond, you insult, you don't look very good. Like, what argument are you trying to make? You just look like an idiot. And then on top of that, being ableist as fuck, yeah, get the fuck out.
Right. And so essentially what the syllogism goes is that all creation entails a change of states. A change of states is a progression of one state to another. The progression of states is time, which would just show that time has just always existed. And we would go through with time having always existed. We know that time and space are intertwined. And the naturalistic world that we live in is the world that we would expect it to be in a naturalistic world. Thus, God is the added baggage. Thus, God's not needed. Thus God doesn't exist. Like that's how that goes. He didn't want to actually debate with it. So I'll bring you back up, but if you want to actually engage with the premises, you can engage with them. But as soon as you divert away from the premises, I'm just going to drop you.
Yeah, sorry for getting rhetorical on you there, host. But just to be clear, the argument you just gave does not follow a valid inference rule. It literally follows a form of PQRS. They're just assertions that don't entail one another. Do you know what an entailment is in logic, soul boy?
So
yes or
P
no?
implies
No.
Q and R implies
Answer
S.
the question. Wait, the first premise was not an implication. You just said that there are states that change, right?
Why are
That's
you
not an
always so
implication,
hurt?
it's an assertion.
Who hurt you? Who
Can
hurt
someone
you?
please muzzle this slow boy? I don't want to talk to him. He got exposed for asking a minor for
See,
me.
there we go.
Asked a minor.
See, Qualia, that's why you get muted, right? Because we mentioned the ableism, and we're just not going to allow it. We're just not going to allow it.
Who hurt these people?
They're so triggered. It's kind of funny how sensitive they are that they can't like deal with more than one person at a time. I mean, it's crazy because you seem so confident in your view. Surely you can take on multiple people, or are you that unconfident in your view that when somebody else chimes in or interjects, you lose your mind? That should tell you something.
Like, he won't even let Cyber get to anything, and knowing full well that Cyber knows his shit. That's the problem.
Anyways, we have been live for a little bit, and I do have another live tonight. Yeah, and ad hominem is invalid. If you have to go to ad hominem, you just lost. But I am probably going to call it here. Everybody, thank you so much. We have Yahweh Bliss, thank you so much. Thinker, thank you so much for smashing that goal out. AK, thank you. Philared, thank you. AC, Rebel, Parker, Slow Q5, etc. Fen, Tootski, Risa, Legend, KC, AZ Mike, Alex, Pax, Be Better, Jason, Dougal, thank you too for smashing some things out. Storm, thank you all so much. Dougal, thank you for coming up today. I really appreciate it. You are always welcome on my panel.
I appreciate you, Cyber. I'll be happy to come back soon.
Are you? When are you going live next?
Probably not till Sunday evening because I'm headed up to Chicago now, as a matter of fact.
Oh, nice. What's going on in Chicago, if you don't mind me asking?
It's where my partner lives.
Oh, nice. And Dugald, real quick before we go, do you wanna talk a little bit about your platform a little bit?
So my platform is mostly socio-political aspects, but also mixed with the Christian side of things, because as we all know, living in the U.S., Christians and conservatives and the political sphere are all one and the same anymore. So I kind of show Christianity and how it affects all things society and all things politics.
All right, and I'm going to bring Thinker up because I want to give Thinker a chance while I'm still live to maybe promote her channel a little bit. Especially for those over on YouTube. We have people over on YouTube who may not know who Thinker is, and so I want to give them a chance to hear about Thinker. And Emily, one last time, do you want to give one last shout out to your channel?
Yeah, I also want to thank you so much for letting me come up and observe. It's been very informative. But yeah, I hold regular debate lives where I do a variety of different topics like feminism, LGBTQI+, AB, all those politics, all those type of debates. And I'm also recently branching out to learn more about religion, especially in regards to philosophy, and then obviously now theology as well. So yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'm also trying to sort of expand to YouTube as well, under the same name as the
Nice. I was just reading Thinker's profile. So, as a matter of fact, how I initially heard about Thinker was from a fake account. It was an account that was like promoting readings, and I was just reading in Thinker's. Okay, Thinker, very well, Thinker. But I saw that first, and then I was like, huh. And then I remembered Justin and some other talking about her, and I was like, huh. And then I actually came across her actual profile, and I saw where it says, I don't do readings. And I just think it's goofy. Why do so many people like do these fake profiles where they copy somebody else, and it's always with readings? They always do some kind of like card reading or something. It's just weird.
It's just all one big grift.
Yep. But anyways, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and drop both of you down. I appreciate both of you coming on up, and we're going to call it here. I will see you all later on tonight on Reason and Rebellion. Give that channel a follow. We'll be going live on there with Jaren at 9 Mountain Standard Time.
Plug in